just want a summary of each one. Yeah, let me.
A printout of the testimony? We only did 4 copies, but we can make sure you,
For each bill.
no.
I don't have that for the bill.
Wait, tell us what you need though, so we can. Representative Buckby, if you could do a sound check with me, that'd be great. Representative Rosario, if you could do a quick sound check with me, that'd be great.
Testing, testing, 1, 2.
I can hear you. How do you hear us?
I can hear you fine.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Check 1, 2.
And good morning, all. I would like to open up this morning's public hearing of the Commerce Committee, this being Tuesday, the 11th. And we are looking forward to hearing from all of our speakers and elected officials. We do have some as well on these 9 bills. And so are there comments from the leadership on the Commerce Committee? Seeing none, we will invite our first guest, who I'm understanding is remote, and that is Representative Rosario, Representative Chris Rosario.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, Senator Hartley, Representative Meskers, ranking members and distinguished members of the Commerce Committee. I'm Representative Christopher Rosario, proudly representing Bridgeport's 128th Assembly District. I'm here to testify on behalf of House Bill 5008, establishing the Connecticut and Puerto Rico Commerce Committee. Connecticut is home to one of the nation's largest Puerto Rican communities, with roughly 280,000 residents, maintaining deep ties to the island. This organic connection fosters leisure and business travel, driving economic potential. Companies like WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment, headquartered here in Connecticut, already have a great presence in Puerto Rico and has brought substantial economic benefits, complemented by other Connecticut companies such as Unilever in Shelton, Subway in Shelton, Avello Airlines from New Haven, the Henkel Corporation, Rocky Hill in Stamford, Hubble Incorporated, again in Shelton, Hamilton Sunstrand, based out of Windsor Locks, Tradewin Aviation out of Oxford, Global Steering Systems out of Watertown, Jacobs Vehicle Systems in Bloomfield, and Kongsberg Automotive, also based in Shelton. Recently, we met with WWE and TKO officials in Stamford, Connecticut, discussing opportunities to strengthen our partnership. WWE's 29 events in Puerto Rico demonstrated successful collaboration, all-time gate records for WWE, over 40 million social media views, record-breaking attendance. By establishing the Connecticut and Puerto Rico Trade Commission, we can formalize existing connections, enhance trade investments and innovation, foster new investment and opportunity. Conclusion, let's invest in a future where Connecticut and Puerto Rico can thrive together. I'll leave it up to any questions the commission has.
Thank you very much, Representative Rosario. And that's quite a lineup of corporate companies as well. Are there comments from, yes, co-chair?
Rep Rosario, good to see you today. Bienvenido, I guess is the way we should start that. When we look going forward on this, I want to have that conversation with you, given your length of experience, and my co-chair, Senator Hartley, and my ranking, Senator Martin and Chris, to talk about the composition of the Trade Commission. The last one that came before us, I believe, was the Irish Trade Commission. And I think I threw out that I was a quarter Irish, but more importantly, not because I wanted to be on it, but I wanted a member of commerce on it. So when we talk about the composition, we look at the formula for that composition. I think it's important that someone from commerce be involved, because we want to make sure that the legislative body leans in on opportunity space as well as the executive. Those would be my only observations. And any thoughts you might have on it, I'd appreciate.
I'm in full agreement of that, Representative. Actually, the state of New York and the state of New Jersey have similar, composition of such board, and they actually approached us and the folks from Puerto Rico saying, "Hey, Connecticut has such a robust Puerto Rican population, and you guys have a lot of folks doing business here on the island." I thought it made great sense.
Great, and I would just mention to the LCO as well, then we probably want to look in drafting on the potential for, with the assignments, that one or two people are assigned as liaisons to the other two states, so that we have communications back among the various working groups, so we can see if there are development opportunities to do in conjunction. So I would just mention that, okay? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Representative Meskers. And yes, Representative Rosario, if there are other models out there that are in existence and we might use in terms of a frame of reference, that would be instructive. Furthermore, I just would like to note that, so we did stand up one commission last year with the resources of this committee, and I'm sensitive to being able to do this in the proper and complete way. So I think we'll want to continue to talk about that and work, quite frankly, in conjunction with the BPRC. And so are there further comments from colleagues? Seeing none, we would like to invite our next speaker is Representative Reyes.
Yep.
Who I saw in here. There he is. Hey, Rep, the floor is yours, Representative Reyes, and welcome.
It's beautiful to be testifying in 3 committees at the same time. One's calling me and I'm up in appropriations talking to the Commissioner Uciliario. Senator Hartley, you would appreciate it. I'm talking about the waterway rail line, so you would appreciate that. But at the end of the day, I want to thank my colleagues Representative Rosario, Santiago, and Candelaria here for coming forward with this piece of legislation that we put forth. And I would just say that, let me lower this here. I would just say that the state of Connecticut, with the largest percentage of Puerto Ricans in the United States of America, outside of Puerto Rico, has a great opportunity here to continue this partnership and collaboration, and to continue expanding and building out on what we call the Connecticut and Puerto Rico Trade Commission. So let me just read my testimony real quick. And dear chairmen, vice chair, ranking members, and members of Commerce, I'm writing to express my strong support for House Bill 5008, an act establishing the Connecticut-Puerto Rico Trade Commission. The legislation presents a critical opportunity to strengthen economic, cultural, and businesses ties between Connecticut, Puerto Rico, benefiting both economies and fostering a long-term, mutually beneficial partnership. We've been very fortunate to, in our travels, to spend a lot of time with the senators in Puerto Rico, and including the Speaker of the House of Puerto Rico, where they're excited about this, because anybody who has an opportunity to expand on the economy and take advantage of the trades that we have as from state to the territory, number one, and for number two, there's always the opportunity to expand on what's already there. There's pharmaceuticals has always been a real big part of the Puerto Rico work and the Puerto Rico trade, and that they were always given tax incentives to be there. And when the laws changed, some of those pharmaceutical companies left, but there's always an opportunity to bring some of those opportunities back to the table, working with the senators and the representatives from Puerto Rico. I think that we can do much more than pharmaceutical, and we can take advantage of the engineering skills and trades that are coming out of the University of Puerto Rico, along with the especially engineering and civil engineering, with the shortage of workers that we have not filling the applications here in our DOT. And every year I talk to DOT, and they always have 60, 70, 80 openings every year. And we're going to be talking to them pretty soon, Senator. So my thought here is that, just as we did with teachers and policemen during after Hurricane Maria, and during COVID, where people on the island struggled to stay there, there was a mass influx of teachers recruited to come here. And Connecticut was one of the states that took probably the most advantage of it. Massachusetts probably did a little better job, but Connecticut did their own fair share. So we saw the benefit more so in teachers, but there was also quite a few policemen that came from Puerto Rico. Waterbury has too. So my point being that we can expand it to beyond the teachers and police officer or law enforcement, and we can actually take a look at civil engineering, and any other opportunities that can lead and help develop the manufacturing and technology and agricultural shortage that we're bumped up against. And then lastly, I'll leave you with, we are in difficult times right now with what the immigrant status is going to be here in the state of Connecticut. We have a lot of people that are in these jobs that are, I'm going to call them farming, agricultural jobs. And if it's not going to be filled by undocumented associates or folks here from other countries that have that expertise, Puerto Rico and the Caribbean could be a viable solution. And I thank you for this opportunity. My testimony has been submitted. It's in your portals. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Reyes. And I know that you're between testimonies, so we'll be quick, but I have to say that your island home is really a beautiful place on this planet. It has showed unbelievable resilience. I always have relished my visit there with you. Not the ride in the mountains, though. I'll tell you that. He's not the best driver, or maybe it wasn't you that was driving, but it was really not, how shall we say it, safe in any stretch of the imagination. But an amazing culture, from the food, the arts, and the hospitality of Puerto Ricans. And you have a very dear and near place in our state of Connecticut and our own city in Waterbury. And so this is a very welcomed proposal, and I look forward to the discussion. But
Th-
thank you very much, Representative
Thank you,
Reyes.
Madam Chair. Thank you.
Comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, you can be off on your next testimony, sir.
Thank you very much.
And we would like to now invite Representative Juan Candelaria, our Deputy President Pro Tem, and representative from the distinguished city of New Haven.
It's nice to see you today, Representative Meskers and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to come and testify before you. And of course, when you hit over the age of 50, you need your special glasses to see everything. So I'm here to express strong support for the proposed House Bill 5008, an act establishing the Connecticut Puerto Rican Trade Commission. This initiative represents strategic opportunity to enhance economic collaboration, cultural exchange, and mutual prosperity between the state of Connecticut and the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. Establishing the Connecticut Puerto Rican Trade Commission will serve as a catalyst for bilateral trade and investment. By fostering closer economic ties, both regions can leverage their unique strength to create jobs, stimulate innovation, and promote sustainable economic growth. The Commission mandate to advance bilateral trade and investment aligns with the broader benefit of trade, which includes fueling economic growth, supporting good jobs, and raising living standards. As my colleagues has already explained, Connecticut already has trade with the island of Puerto Rico. Pratt & Whitney is one of them. You have Harco also, who has a 200,000 square foot facility on the island. And what we're looking for with this language is how do we, knowing that Connecticut being so progressive, how can we establish those relationships and build upon what currently exists on the island? I think this is a great opportunity for us to develop that relationship and create the commerce that we need, not only for our state, but also for the island of Puerto Rico. We've been in conversation with elected officials on the island who are looking forward for this bill moving forward. I think it's a great opportunity, not only for us, but for our state to continue our small business owners that are currently here and are doing business on the island. What better way for us to expand and move forward with this? The Commission's role in initiating joint action on policy issues of mutual interest is pivotal by collaborating on shared challenges and opportunities. Connecticut and Puerto Rico can develop cohesive strategies to address economic development, infrastructure enhancement, and other critical areas. So right now, even when we do exchange with, that UConn does a lot of work on the island of Puerto Rico, as my predecessor, who spoke earlier before me, Representative Reggie, talked about, there's always this collaboration with the island, bringing teachers to Connecticut, right? Because we have a teacher shortage, taking those talent and bringing it here to the island, and vice versa. Seeing that exchange between the two, I think that we have a great opportunity for us to continue to expand. And hopefully this committee will look this very favorably and move the bill out of committee. So thank you for the opportunity to come before you and testify. Any questions from the committee?
Thank you so much for being here, and for also putting this forward to us. Would you be able to just comment? You mentioned that the University of Connecticut does a lot of work already on the island. I know there's been a chair that's recently established. Could you just speak to that?
Yes. So right now, I know that the University of Connecticut there was the creation of the Puerto Rican Studies on UConn. They've been doing a lot of collaboration with the island in academic exchanges. I can get you more information on the specifics of it, but I know that's been happening for quite some time now, where Puerto Rico has made an approach to UConn, expressing an interest in building upon that relationship, because it's so critical to create, not only develop, the new individuals for tomorrow's job, but also how can we look at what's being offered on the island and how can we bring it here and vice versa to the island. So I think those exchanges are critical and important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just wondering, Representative Candelaria, does the university have a campus on the island?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
No.
And there was some talk uh, in the recent past about the old San Juan area being kind of designated to become a Bitcoin center. And I just wondered if there's any traction or movement on that.
Well, the conversations are still ongoing, and that's on the table definitely to expand in the island. So I hopefully will see that moving forward at some point, but I have no more details. One thing I would like to mention also, our casinos have moved to the island. We have a casino on the island. Mohegan has one on a collaboration with Hotel San Juan on the island, and that's been going very, very well. So hopefully we can see that also expanding.
Oh, that's interesting. Did not realize that.
Mhm.
Comments from colleagues, questions? Yes, Representative Meskers.
Thank you very much for the testimony. I'm glad you mentioned Mohegan because I'll give another to do on the LCO, but probably we need to reach out and can talk to the Pequot and Mohegans about their sovereign nations and potential opportunities between them and us and Puerto Rico. So maybe as we bring forward whatever the Trade Commission looks like, we kind of put that in there as well. I think it makes
Exactly.
sense.
I agree.
Have we had any conversations with any of the major industry groups in Connecticut yet about
Well,
this?
we already engaged in conversation with WWE is one of them,
Mhm.
and we're lining up with others to explore those opportunities.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. It's always good to get our elected representatives to testify on these issues because given their background and their experience, it helps to think about how we want to organize this. So I really want to thank you for taking the time out. I'm
Thank you
sure
for the
what's a busy
opportunity
day.
to listen to us.
Thank you. Further questions from committee members? Seeing none. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Look
Senator.
forward to our continued conversation on
Definitely.
this. And we'd like to now invite remotely Senator Flexer. Is Senator Flexer with us? Oh, it's in person, none other than our senator from the what's the district, please? From the 29th. You have the floor, madam.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Senator Hartley, Representative Meskers, Representative Anaskovich, and members of the Commerce Committee. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be here this morning and testify in support of Senate Bill 1178, an act establishing a central internet website for state resources available to small businesses. I want to sincerely thank the committee for looking at this bill and taking this proposed bill seriously. This bill is an idea, frankly, that's come to me because of many conversations I've had with small businesses throughout Northeastern Connecticut and the communities that I represent. And I'm sure they're similar to conversations that each of you have had with small business owners in your districts. Here in the state legislature, we enact important policies that are designed to improve the lives of people in our state. And those policies often get implemented by various state agencies. And when you're a small business trying to navigate all of those policies, it can be really confusing. And so, in the conversations I've had with small business owners, they have come to me and said, look, I want to follow this policy. I want to follow that law. I want to understand this, but there's so many different things coming at us at different points. It's hard to understand every time a law changes, every time a policy is updated, and it's hard to find one place with all of the information with regard to taxes or how to renew a liquor license or how to know what the minimum wage change is about to be. So the proposal that I've put forward with Representative Haddad here in this committee, and again, I'm so grateful that you're looking at it, is for the state to build a dashboard, if you will, that small businesses can go to and find that information in a one-stop shopping kind of way, to go to one place and find all of the information they need about the different ways that businesses interact with state government. So that's the proposal. It's hopefully an opportunity for state agencies to come together and work together to build this dashboard. Frankly, I think it's an opportunity for us to make government more user friendly and to make it more accessible and to make the prospect of both starting and sustaining a small business a little bit easier here in the state of Connecticut. So I thank you for your time and the opportunity to testify before you this morning.
Thank you very much, Senator Flexer. And yes, this is something, quite frankly, that is a primary focus of this committee in terms of accessibility and ease for, in particularly, the small business sector of the state of Connecticut, because that's the sector that really doesn't have the deep resources, the deep bench. They wear many hats. They are the backbone of our economy. And we need to make things as seamless as possible and also as affordable as possible. And of course, I reference the governor's budget, which just came out with reductions in fees for certain trades and so forth. But this is going to be a conversation, quite frankly, with the department, which does maintain a website. We are always trying to improve on that and make it better. And I have vicariously had comments shared with me that, they either couldn't find something or it was very labor intense and how many clicks do you have to do? And then still it's not obvious where you're going. So I appreciate the conversation. And it's something I think that can always be perfected. So I would ask any of my colleagues if they have any comments or questions. Yes. Yes, Representative Maniscalco.
Thank you very much for obviously bringing this forward to our committee. And I get the same conversations that you do with the small businesses. I'm from a small, my district is small, Clinton, Killingworth, and Westbrook, a lot of mom and pop shops, a lot of small businesses. And the issue a lot, according to them, is just that things are available. But can you speak to how do you think that we can get the word out to them? Because I think it's more so, how do we get the word to these small businesses? How do we direct them to the proper channels so that they know these things are available to them? Because I think in a lot of cases, it's just like we don't know. And the difficulty thing is how do we engage these small businesses and get the word out to them?
I think that's a really great question. And I think that your question speaks to why I think this dashboard is the way to go. Small businesses are trying to navigate multiple state agencies, multiple websites to know what the requirements are, to know what their deadlines are for different filings, to know what updates are happening to the law. And it's just too much when you're also trying to manage the challenge of staffing and whether or not you're the cook in the kitchen that night. And so I envision this being a dashboard that sort of becomes ubiquitous, right? I don't know. I trust that maybe folks on this committee or maybe folks at the Department of Economic and Community Development will come up with a catchy name for this website that small businesses will become familiar with once the dashboard is built, where folks will know this is a place where you can go and get most of the information. And I know that when this is crafted, it maybe can't have a guarantee that every single requirement that might affect a small business is going to be located on this particular dashboard, but you come up with a catchy name, small businesses .ct.gov or whatever, which is the place you can go to learn how to get started and to how to maintain your small business and whatever deadlines and requirements you're trying to meet, and to also know when the laws change. And so hopefully we can come up with that clever name that will become something that small businesses all across the state are familiar with. And this dashboard can be something that's continually updated and something that's really user-friendly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Meskers.
Thank you for your testimony today. I think the problem you outline is a fundamental problem in government, which is making the resources of the government available. I've made the observation, being down in Fairfield County, on the simple issue of tourism. And as a committee of cognizance for tourism, I don't find it easy to go online and just find out what's going on in the theater sector across the state for small venues across the state, hotel availability for the smaller hotels and beds and breakfasts. I think creating a dashboard or a couple of dashboards across the state where we could get our resources more unified so that the consumer comes, and whether it's a small business, and he's going to go through a number of agencies, and he's going to have to drill around and fish around to get the links and get that drill down menu that works and is intuitive. Because I know myself, when I sometimes get on the website and try to figure out what the right question is to get to the right site, it's very frustrating. And that dashboard should be looked at as that, I think, for small businesses, inclusive of, and I've had the conversation, there's a number of grants that are available at the state side. Then there are federal grants. And I think this might be too big a piece to chew on in the short term, but I don't know that we are at the right level of advocacy for helping people in their grant writing exercises as well, or that people would know, or whether we're capable or willing to undertake that. But some of the smaller businesses, if we're looking at trying to maximize our return of federal funds or maximize the benefit of the state funds, that we would be able to both list grants and at some point, if there are grants available, explain to people how they could go about qualifying and applying for them. So I think the idea of the dashboard might be a heavy lift conceptually in terms of the design and getting it going, but I think it's the right way to go. So I really appreciate the testimony.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Meskers. Senator Rahman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. Yeah, it is a great idea. I know oftenly I receive a lot of phone call from the small business owner when time to renewal their license. They can sometimes find where they go or taking hours to go. Most our small business like convenience store, grocery store, all those people, they are not trained well. Go one place and print out or fill out everything or extended their license. So my question to you, this is really great idea. One place they can find everything, dashboard is really unique. You think right now, I know that maybe we have 10 different license for running convenience store or grocery store or gas station. You want to sell the egg and cheese, you need the application to fill out and pay one area. And then you want to sell the food, serve the food, you need another license. You want to sell the wine or beer, you need another one. It's on and on and on. Unique is good idea to have the one unique application, except the whatever the related with the DOR and public health. Just one application for under the consumer protection, and that way they can go one application, the dashboard, boom, right there. But fee, they are not changing. All the fee they need to pay, they can do. So one unique application, you think will be a good idea?
I think that's an interesting question, Senator, and I would not come to this committee and pretend to be an expert on all the different licenses that are required. I would imagine that some of those requirements are in place to maintain safety, and there's different requirements for different kinds of services you provide. And so, as someone who serves in this legislature and helps pass laws that end up becoming some of those licensing requirements, I wouldn't necessarily be in the best position to evaluate whether there should be multiple licenses for different kinds of services. But what I would say is that if we're going to have those various kinds of requirements, then we need to make it easy for people to understand them. And that's why I think this dashboard is such an important idea. I'll leave it to the public health experts and the food service experts and others to determine whether you should have a license that's separate for selling eggs versus selling a egg and cheese sandwich. But I think this dashboard could be the place where you could find out which license you need to do each of those things.
I'm with you 100%. Yeah, this dashboard will help them, time consuming also for unique application for that state also, because they have to review all 10 different applications and the process and issuing all the license. But now all the consumer or the business owner, they can go to the dashboard. Maybe they can find easily to fill out this. So thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Further comments? Yes, Representative Rochelle.
Thank you. I just wanted to commend you for putting this concept forward. In my district, I have this small business support packet that I create once a year. And it is so, as legislators, we understand what most of these programs are. And even still, I need to work with DECD annually to update which programs have sunsetted, which ones are just coming on the horizon. When you're handing out a paper packet, you have all these long, links to click. And so having one website you can direct people to where they can find all this information easily would be such a huge help to small business in the state. And if we really want to walk the walk, this is definitely the way to go. So thank you for putting this forward.
Thank you, Representative. And I think Representative Rochelle has just solved half the problem with this proposal. We'll just take her small business packet and we'll turn it into a website. And there you go. There's a way to move the bill
I
forward.
have the document. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. We love efficiencies. But let me just comment. So the Department of Economic and Community Development has right now a one-stop. They describe it as a one-stop portal. It's business.ct.gov. Have you visited that, Representative?
I have looked at that a little bit, and I
Yeah.
have had business owners that have looked at that as well. The problem is it doesn't have everything.
Right.
It just has things that are about DECD primarily, not about all the, right? When you register a business, your first interaction is often with the Secretary of the State's office. You have to interact with DCP. You have to interact with the Department of Public Health. You have to interact with so many different agencies. And so I think it could build off of what DECD has done, but be broader in scope. I think this is an opportunity for state agencies to break down walls between each other, which they've done a good job of recent years. Do it some more to collaborate on this website and build this dashboard so you can find all the information you might need.
Agreed. There is always the next step. There is always something that we can do better. Case in point, our recent manufacturing caucus, manufacturers were testifying, and we had the CMO, Chief Manufacturing Officer, talking about the ombudsman for permitting. And this manufacturer is saying, well, we have so much problem with this. And well, do you know about this ombudsman? And to Representative Anaskovich's point, informing people is really a large part of this as well. And so we've got to, figure out how to crack that code. Appreciate your proposal and your being with us this morning. If there are no further comments, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very
In person.
much.
I thought that you were going to be remote.
Thank you.
Okay, we would like to next invite Representative Berger Carvalho. She's remote, is she, Madam Clerk? No? She's in person. She's not here. Okay, well, just flag that for us. If in fact she plugs in. Like to invite Brian Garcia, Connecticut Green Bank. And good morning, Mr. Garcia.
Good morning, co-chairs Hartley and Meskers, ranking member Anaskovic, and members of the Commerce Committee. My name is Brian Garcia. I'm president and CEO of the Connecticut Green Bank. I am here today to support HB 5008. As a Puerto Rican, born and raised in Southern California, I got my first traveling experience as a 16-year-old playing baseball in the Mickey Mantle World Series in Waterbury, Connecticut at Municipal Stadium. The Norwalk Cardinals had the best baseball players in the country. Nomar Garcia Parra played for the Norwalk Cardinals the year after I did. We were the best until we met the team from Puerto Rico, who not only were talented, but had the Connecticut and New York Puerto Rican community behind them, beating drums, singing songs, and bringing another level of energy to their team. They ended up mercying us in 3 innings. Why is it important that Connecticut and Puerto Rico have a trade commission? Beyond the growing Puerto Rican community in Connecticut, we have clean energy, climate change, and finance-related opportunities to realize together. From a clean energy perspective, through the nearly unanimous bipartisan passage of Public Act 19-35, an act concerning the green economy and environmental protection, we are seeing solar deployment in Connecticut greater than ever before. From a climate change perspective, through the unanimous bipartisan passage of Public Act 21-53, an act concerning energy storage, we have the public policy tools to increase our reliance against the impacts of climate change, keeping power on when the grid is not. The Public Utilities Regulatory Authority is doing an outstanding job implementing these public policies on your behalf, increasing investment in solar PV and battery storage deployment that is reducing energy costs and increasing energy security. And lastly, from a finance perspective, working with our partner in Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rico Green Energy Trust, and the American Green Bank Network, we are building a national network of financial institutions that are increasing private investment in clean energy deployment that benefits families and businesses. It is essential that we create smart collaborative opportunities to learn and grow in this new era where we are constantly always being tested. Aging infrastructure and surprising weather events constantly present more new challenges. At times like these, when we are all learning, growing, and mastering new skills and technologies, it is incredibly beneficial to have experienced collaborative associates who have been there and done that. This kind of synergy allows us to craft new tactics to improve our efforts to increase our resiliency. And our ability to work well with Puerto Rico is truly enhanced by our population of Puerto Rican Americans with so many talents who now call Connecticut home. The time could not be more right. Thank you for allowing me to make these remarks.
And thank you very much, Brian. And thank you for your leadership on the Green Bank. Very, very important topic as we go forward. And for your support on 5008. And by the way, I bet you all those bats were made in Waterbury too. And they are now actually, although we have lost them, they are now, I believe, in Cheshire. But they're supplying all the major league bats as well. So we always are very proud of that. Thank you. Are there comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time to be with us this morning and your support on this very important conversation.
Thank you.
Best. I would like to now invite John Logan from Make Haven, Executive Director. Hello, John. You can put your mic on if you would.
Hit the button.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair and honorable committee members. I'm here to support SB 1179. My name's J.R. Logan, and I've lived in Connecticut for 20 years. In 2012, I co-founded Make Haven, a nonprofit makerspace in New Haven with a mission to equip people with the tools to design, invent, and create. Today, as executive director, I lead an organization that has grown tremendously in capabilities, reach, and impact, thanks in large part to the visionary support of the state of Connecticut through the Innovation Places program. Our 12,000 square foot facility includes a wood shop, metal shop, textiles lab, 3D printers, and more equipment carefully selected so members can make almost anything: art, prototypes, and products. At Make Haven, we provide a rare opportunity for adults to engage in hands-on exploration of technology and tools. More importantly, we foster a network of support for people looking to invent and build. We host educational programs, incubate startups, and support a thriving network of 810 members. Through programs, workshops, events, we reach thousands of others. But Make Haven's not alone. Makerspaces, large and small, have emerged across Connecticut, empowering makers and entrepreneurs. Connecticut has a deep legacy of making and manufacturing. The organic rise of makerspaces across the state proves that residents have a strong desire to make it here. But making doesn't happen in isolation. Independent inventors and entrepreneurs often lack access to equipment, knowledge, and community. Makerspaces bridge that gap, fostering grassroots innovation because they are affordable, accessible, and open-ended. Each of these spaces is an asset to the state, but together as a network, their potential is far greater. Once established, makerspaces generate revenue through memberships, workshops, and grants. However, maintaining the industrial capabilities so that people can come have significant costs. Many makerspaces struggle to sustain operations while providing these vital services such as entrepreneurship support and reduced price access for low-income individuals. New makerspaces face even greater challenges to build their capacity and expand their reach. This legislation seeks to foster a strong, stable network of makerspaces, ensuring grassroots access to the tools of innovation statewide, and accelerating the development of the next homegrown innovation and companies. Connecticut's greatest asset is its people, and the spirit and history of innovation are woven into our identity. Makerspaces are a powerful tool to harness the creativity and fulfill the promise that everyone can make it here. I urge you to support this legislation to sustain and grow our makerspaces, ensuring that all of Connecticut residents have the tools to invent, innovate, and create. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you for being here. If I might, how many makerspaces are there in Connecticut right now? Do you know?
Yeah, there's several categories. There's 5 big ones. There's big ones, and then there's many, many smaller ones. So there's at least a dozen. But some of them are so grassrootsy that it's hard to have an exact count.
And your makerspace, I'm sorry, what is the name of it?
It's called Make Haven.
Oh, Make Haven. Are you the largest or one of the largest?
Well, there's actually Hartford is quite large, but we are the largest by member count.
I see. And you were launched when, please, John?
We were launched in 2012.
And that was with the Community Challenge grant?
We existed for some time, but then we got Innovation Places funding that helped us build our capacity and expand.
And what was that grant?
That was through CT Next.
Yeah.
That then created a group locally, and they helped to decide where those funds went.
And what was your funding line from DECD?
It was through CT Next, as far as I understand. Which I believe was separate, but I'm not perfectly familiar.
With what that?
You're talking about the Innovation Places funding?
Yes.
Yeah, so I believe that was
to the makerspace, to Make Haven.
We haven't received funding recently, but we're asking that that be considered either through the DECD or some other mechanism as appropriate.
But your initial funding?
Oh, our initial funding was private. Just people got together and all pooled resources.
And then there was a state infusion, which was, that's what I'm trying to
Yes. So CT Next was the agency that granted us money.
And what was that dollar amount?
Oh, it was a 5-year plan. And we received up to $80,000 in a year. And so we received a couple $100,000 over that 5-year plan.
So
we received
the allocation was
several
80K, up to 80K for 5 years.
It was scaled differently each year. So it was significant over that time.
And your members pay a stipend, a fee, or how does that work?
Yeah, so there's a standard fee of $60 per month, although we have a cost scale based on income. So you may pay as little as $30 per month.
And the range of vendors or entrepreneurs in your space goes the entire gamut. I mean, do you take someone who is not above a certain income level, or?
Oh, it's absolutely everybody who is an adult. And so that's one of the things it's really organic and emergent. So rather than being institutional and really direct about what you do, we try and be a network of support, an open platform and lab. So people are in there creating and interacting in all sorts of ways that overlap entrepreneurship, art, and creativity in all its forms.
And then the language here in the proposal before us talks about industrial grade tools. So is it always that, or what about someone who is an artist and doesn't use industrial grade tools per se?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the purposes of talking about specific economic development, I've focused on the industrial tools because those are an important part of what we are. But we also do have things that people might think of more as art, and that's a specific or a significant component of our membership. And I believe that the interaction actually between people doing hard tech and people doing more artistic endeavors often leads to all sorts of incidents and collisions of creativity and innovation.
And so industrial grade tools, would that be like robotics?
Yeah, so some examples are Bridgeport mills, metal lathes, a water jet cutter, which was actually an additional allocation through the Innovation Places program. It's like a big CNC machine that cuts with water. Our goal with all of these machines is that we are expanding our capability so you can at least make something at a prototype level, nearly anything at a prototype level. And this is built for grassroots. So we want to get people, and even if you had no experience, we have ways to get people to use those tools through our network of volunteers and classes, and access is the important thing that we do.
And so your hours are very unconventional.
Yes.
Because people can go there at midnight.
Yeah, so each member has an RFID card, and they can come in 24/7. So we never close.
And you've been lights on since 2012. So do your entrepreneurs graduate and move on to their own footprint?
So it's not a linear program. It's more a community. So we have startups that have residents there that incubate, and they may outgrow us and move on. We do have specific programs that people take, and there's a course where you're learning progressive skills. But the majority of the activity is people working at all different levels to access those tools for ideas that may go nowhere, or ideas that they're working over a long period or a very short focus period. We don't determine that. We're just there to be the platform to help empower and enable people to do what they want.
So an entrepreneur doesn't necessarily time out. It's all based upon whatever their trajectory is with their
Yeah,
initiative.
there's no timeout, and it's very DEY. So we are providing the space, and they come in on their own schedule. We have a schedule of volunteers. There's 40 volunteers volunteering weekly to teach people on how to move forward. So there's those supportive resources. But other than that scheduling, people come in on their own and they organically meet, and there's some online systems for them to connect. And we do community events and try and bring everybody forward in an organic way.
And so in an ideal makerspace model, are you associated with an institution of higher education?
We have no association with any other official institution. I mean, we have agreements. So, for example, Gateway Community College comes over and does some classes using our equipment. We've had different agreements with Yale where they've had some classes that come participate with us. And so we have partnerships, but we don't have any, formal institutional arrangement.
And we've got a fair amount of testimony in favor of 1179, and I assume that these are from all of your entrepreneurs and those who are involved, be they volunteers or the like. Is that what I'm saying?
I mean, I put we're doing this out to our membership, and I was very happy to see that so many people put their hands up. But it's not just Make Haven that is Makerspace supporters from the broader network of makerspaces around the state.
And you mentioned that there were really 5 big ones. So there's the Maker Haven, there's Hartford. Where are the
Yeah,
others?
so Spark Makerspaces is in New London.
What is it, Spark?
Spark, yeah, Spark is their name. CT Makerspace is in Hartford here. They have a very nice facility, and some of the folks are here today in support, and I know have submitted written testimony. Danbury, I know, has received some significant state funding for infrastructure, and so they have been retooling and are opening a new space. There's a private space in Stamford. And there's, there's a whole collection of mid-sized ones. So there's Nesset in Meriden. There's another one in Watertown. And I'm counting these as independent nonprofits that are gathering adults together. There's a number of makerspaces inside libraries, inside schools, and those sorts of things. And those are wonderful partners. The ones at public libraries actually have been in New Haven. We partner with them, and they send people to us all the time because they get a teaser, an introduction, but then they find out they need some heavier capabilities, and they come to us.
What's a private one you talked about?
Yeah, so GE supports a makerspace down there that's wonderful and open to the public. It's a different model. And
interesting. But thank you very much, John. Comments, questions from my colleagues? Yes, Senator Rahman.
I was going to let you go first. Sorry, I missed part of the testimony. I was dragged up for a vote. The background on Makerspace now is for how many years? I don't want you to repeat all of your testimony.
Yeah, 13 years for us, but it's been a phenomenon that's been emergent and growing, not just in Connecticut, but I think Connecticut has a significance with it because of our history with industry, is that there's more of these arising.
So I won't belabor the points, but my only concerns when I look at this in the state expenditure and the opportunity space, I think is constructive and positive. The concerns I would have is what direct linkage to whether it's the VTech, VOTech, or community colleges. I think we started that conversation out in the hallway. And going forward, what entrepreneurial opportunities there are for people to begin to explore this space. And then either through Connecticut Innovations or DECD, what potentials there are for sponsorship or innovation and potential investments for some. Yeah, I think using the state dollars to provide the space is phenomenal. I think constructively, I'd like to see the opportunity space to generate business growth and opportunity for the state or for the private sector through the state, and to grow it, and to see if there's an assessment or review of the utilization of the space, the applications you're getting from people who come in. Are there opportunities that are interesting that the state, whether Connecticut Innovations, DCD, to potentially invest or help sponsor? Because right now, I guess what I'm hearing is the request or interest in continued funding. So I want to see if there's a roadmap over time, not to turn you into a factory or to turn you into a production line, but that the innovation is somehow captured and realized as well, because I think that's important. Most of the testimony that I read was universally in support. One of the testimonies suggested that they had found the gateway to develop some products that was highly successful. I thought about that and I wondered, how do we partner with people like that versus launch them and move them on? Because then I'm the funding source for opportunity and the state isn't recognizing any of it, or they're other than, becomes almost an educational endeavor, which I'm not opposed to, but it's outside our educational lines of oversight. So I'm trying to figure that out myself. I bring that to you, and I'd love your comments or thoughts back.
Yeah, so I think the first part of your question to me was like, how does this interact with all the other programs in education? And the way I see it is we're a place for exploration with super low barrier to entry, super low cost. So if you're going to engage in becoming a CNC operator, it might be good before you enroll in a larger program for you to come in and have a lower stakes experience, maybe even experience using it for something of passion and art. So we give people that opportunity so they can have hands-on and really know, do you want to be a woodworker and a carpenter the rest of your life or not? Then most of the maker spaces have some pretty robust programs. Some of them workforce development oriented. Hartford's got a very strong program that way. And we're building ours and getting stronger as well. So we link in and we seek out those funding from the state and partner with the state wherever we can. Because of our organic nature, we're always trying to fit each person has a different story and a different journey and length. And we're trying to fit them into those places. When we have an entrepreneur that's successful, we are trying to get them to the existing resources. So there was a whole series of pitch competitions that was done at, CT Next, and I think the DECD, as they are developing some of their new programming, as some of those responsibilities shifted, I think that is coming back hopefully, and we leverage all of those resources. And several of our startups have received awards and funding for being able to move prototypes into products. So I see this in concert, as part of the portfolio of the types of things and on-ramps that people need that supplement the existing workforce development, that supplement the existing support for entrepreneurs. And I think kind of the last part is like, how does this benefit the state? My theory, although I'm not coming with solid evidence on it, is that if you support homegrown people that have family and sentimental ties to the state, they're much more likely to stay and build that business, and that success is going to come back to the state down the line.
I appreciate that. Is there any institutional or formalized relationship with the VTech schools or VOTech schools in terms of exposure? Because it seems to me them or the regular high schools, they or the regular high schools would be perfect seed grounds to get people involved.
Yeah, we have had different high school groups we've partnered with Gateway. I do think that that's something that we all could do more. I know some of the other maker spaces have, again, I mentioned Hartford has had some strong new formal relationships with various other institutions, and we are all working and growing. As a startup in a way, well, I guess we've been around 13 years, a little more than a startup, but it feels like with the level of growth that we are always discovering new areas for partnership, and that's one where we can evolve as we gain the capacity.
So my thought on that would just be, I'm probably looking at some point for something more formulaic on that, because I think that's important to me. I think it almost circles back, if you were here from the beginning, the conversation of resources of the state and the dashboard. At some level, you represent a dashboard for both entrepreneurs and for our either disconnected youth or our youth who are looking for opportunities and exposure for careers. And I would hope or look for, and that we may not be in total agreement on that. I would look for a more formulaic relationship to be able to move that process along as it relates to both manufacturing and entrepreneurship. I just want people, to the extent that the state gets involved, right? But I appreciate that if that what you're here to testify for.
Yeah, we're certainly committed to getting people to the right place.
Good, thank you. No further questions from me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Rahman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question I want to ask, Mr. Chair already asked the question, but somehow I maybe missed it. Are you the for-profit or non-profit?
Oh, we are non-profit. The vast majority of the maker spaces are non-profit.
Okay. All right. Thank you. No further question, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Further comment? Yes, Representative Anaskevich.
Hi, thank you for your testimony and the enlightening of kind of what you do. And that leads me to my real simple question as far as how do you promote this? How does the word get out to the public and to the people so that they know that these are available to them and that they can use them?
Yeah. Well, we work hard, but we could always do more. When we do surveys, it's the word of mouth is absolutely number one. And we have a lot of folks that are excited about it. Of course, social media. Occasionally, we're lucky enough to get a story. I've got a backpack full of flyers if you'd like one. So we do everything we can. But every person that tells someone helps. And I would be more than happy to give anyone here a tour. And I know that all the other maker spaces would love to give any of you a tour as well. And let me know or let the others know if you'd like to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Anaskevich. And one more question, if I might, John. So have you or do you know if any of your colleagues in this space have availed themselves to the Manufacturing Innovation Fund?
I do not know for sure. I believe so. Certainly we are akin and we're in line with manufacturing and discuss with the state those things. So, but we have not currently.
Okay, that's helpful to know. And of course, the initiative that was launched more recently through the tourism office, which is the Make It Here in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Is there any, have you connected at all on that campaign? Has there been any synergies to be realized?
I have not had real significant contact around that catchphrase. I reached out to some folks at like Advanced CT and we've had some conversations. So I've talked to different people, but not specific. I will just say related to that, this is just a observation. We have had people thinking of moving to CT that come and tour our space and tell us that they specifically were influenced by where they were going to locate because of the presence of a makerspace. And so, not only are people making it here, but people are coming to make it here.
And lastly, I promise this will be my last one. Anything in the bio sector?
Yeah, so New Haven is a bio hub. And one of the things that's unexpected is that there is a maker DIY bio movement. And so you can have a BSL-1, meaning it's essentially like kitchen safe. So we're very limited and constrained in what we can do. But we have a room that has the basic tools, stuff you might find in a high school. But it's useful both for prototypers. So we've had folks working with algae and other things. We partner with Climate Haven, which is a climate tech incubator that has co-located with us. And so some of their entrepreneurs have innovations and work that cross biology and hard tech. And so they're able to use our lab for some of their early work. And then later moving on to higher level labs that have the formality that's required to do more extensive work. But we also do community education. So we've done things such as DNA fingerprinting as a workshop or drawing in Petri dishes. So we do have a biotech, but at a base level of citizen involvement and education.
Because that then begins to connect with the entity known as CI, Connecticut Innovations, which is the venture fund arm of economic development for the state. And has there been any connection or work done in relation to CI?
Yeah, so Connecticut Innovations, we've had lots of interactions over time. And we've referred some of the startups. For example, we have a startup that examines amazingly small particles and we have put forward some of those companies as potential investments. My understanding is that as an independent nonprofit, that CI wouldn't be, able to invest in us or directly fund us. Although if if there's opportunities to work more closely together, I'm always open-eared and ready to learn.
But in particularly for your entrepreneurs.
Oh yeah, for our entrepreneurs,
yeah.
and that's part of what I mentioned in here is it's hard to fund the entrepreneurship support, and it's just we're going 10 directions, and one of the things I'd like to see Makerspace have is some dedicated resources so that we put some additional people on making those connections, bridging all these gaps, because we have these hives of activity, and we're trying to plug people into the right places, but there's so much available. We don't always have the full dashboard in front of us. So
we were just talking about dashboards.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, John. I appreciate it. Are there further questions from our colleagues? Seeing none, thank you for being with us and for all of your work and leadership on this.
Thank you so much.
Would like to next invite Christopher Sidwa, the Urban Mining Connecticut LLC.
Chairperson Hartley, Chairperson Meskers, and distinguished members of the Commerce Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 6784, an act establishing incentives for contractors to use low-embodied carbon concrete. My name is Christopher Sidwa, a Yukon class of 02, and a project developer with Urban Mining. We manufacture a functionally superior, ultra-low carbon replacement to ordinary Portland cement called Positive Ground Glass Pozzolan. Our plant is in Beacon Falls, and our customers are primarily Connecticut concrete producers. As a state, Connecticut imports its cement from places like Pennsylvania, New York, and Canada. By doing so, we outsource jobs and cause pollution in someone else's backyard. And in these politically uncertain times, we could be faced with shortages and cost increases due to trade conflicts out of our control. By replacing cement with positive GGP manufactured right here in Beacon Falls, we secure Connecticut jobs and avoid nearly 1 ton of pollution for every ton of our material used. We also create a better performing, longer lasting concrete that extends the life of Connecticut's infrastructure, creating real long-term value for taxpayers. And we use waste glass that has no home to produce our material, saving municipalities on waste disposal costs and the associated environmental issues related to landfilling and incineration. I'd like to spotlight the leadership of Connecticut DAS and DOT, who identified these benefits early on and have been encouraging the use of positive in their projects. Leadership by the state government through procurement is driving change in our industry. But as an industry, we currently lack the tools and equipment needed for a broad rollout of this better concrete. And so today I ask you to show similar leadership by supporting the concrete industry to build the distribution infrastructure it needs to deliver low cement, low carbon concrete to public and private construction projects across the state. Thank you for your climate leadership, and thank you again for the opportunity to address the committee in support of this bill.
Thank you, Christopher. And this is a learning journey for me, but I'm going to defer immediately to my co-chair, who has been a visitor, I believe, in your establishment.
Yes.
Representative Meskers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what's the barrier at this point to acceptance? Is it the fact that it's low carbon? Is the production cost at some level higher, or is it the cost of transport, or what are the barriers right now for broader acceptance?
The cost of production is we have line of sight on cost parity. We're very close to being able to produce at a profit, and we already distribute the material at cost parity. The main issue that I think we're facing is our customers, the concrete producers. They lack the incentive because there's a lack of demand signal, or they lack the ability or finances to construct the infrastructure that they need to receive our material and put it into their products. The state leading the charge with DAS and DOT infrastructure work is fantastic. But every now and then, and quite frequently, actually, we get pushback from our customers saying we can't use your material because we don't know if there's enough demand for it and we don't have anywhere to store it. So to create concrete, you need to keep a variety of materials on site. And in order to store those materials, you need infrastructure, specifically silos, and you need some assistance in understanding, creating new mix designs so that there are products that are low carbon at the right price for the industry to use.
And with the increase in the deposit rates for glass, are you finding any limitations on the supply side for the base product?
Not so far. You know, as our business has grown, we've been able to acquire the glass we need to keep up with demand.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Meskers. Just help me out. Can you maybe discuss a little bit your price point, knowing that this is a, are you still with us?
I'm here, yes.
Yeah.
Our price point is, we aim to be competitive with the cement that we replace. So when a concrete producer is sourcing materials, they are not disadvantaged by purchasing our material instead of cement. Unfortunately, right now, our cost of production is a little bit higher than the cost that we sell it at, the price we sell it at. That's just a scale issue. As more demand comes online and we can move through that production cycle, we'll get to parity and we'll be profitable.
And so, Christopher, are you a one of a kind? Is there any other producers than yourself of this particular product?
Connecticut has a great claim to fame in the fact that this is our manufacturing facility is the first of its kind in the world. Since our beginnings in 2020, other producers have come online, but it's a very regional industry, so you won't find the produce of another company in the Connecticut market. I've heard of some in Canada and some in New York, but we are one of a kind in Connecticut.
And you mentioned that you do have some state contracts, DOT?
Not so much contracts, but the DOT has written our material into their specifications. Okay. So when there is a project, whoever is running that construction project is being told that it's a preference to use our material, but not a mandate. And if they can source it at cost parity, then they should be using it. And DOT does offer some incentives to use it. If you're using our material, you are very likely to hit certain performance thresholds because it is a superior product. And if you hit those performance thresholds, you can receive a bonus for using the material.
And so right now, your challenge is capital?
It's an industry-wide challenge. So we are a manufacturer of a material that goes into concrete, and the people who produce the concrete, they are challenged with capital constraints to put up silos and other infrastructure to store our material. I mean, we are always capital constrained as well. As I said, we're running at a slight loss to produce this material and provide it to the industry at the price we're selling it at. So capital to improve our facilities is definitely needed as well. But it's an industry-wide issue to expand the opportunity for Connecticut to continue leading as a clean concrete user.
And help me out, because this is way out of my wheelhouse, but you talked about the fact that potential customers, users need to be equipped to take your product, and by virtue of having storage. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, absolutely. So at your typical concrete production company, you'll have what's called a batch plant, and you can have different silos holding cement, aggregates, positive, other SCMs. SCMs are supplementary cementitious materials, which our material is. It's not cement, but it replaces cement. So those various materials need to be stored on site so that when a construction project calls up and needs a delivery of concrete, the various inputs to that concrete mix can be accessed and used. But if the construction project calls for a low carbon solution and the concrete producer doesn't have a silo filled with our material, then obviously that construction project won't get a low carbon positive blend.
And so Christopher, you talked about the proposal is to establish a program to incentivize users, contractors, subcontractors. But you did talk about the fact that DOT right now does have incentives for this product.
DOT has incentives if you are able to source the material and use it and you achieve those performance thresholds, then you will get an incentive from DOT. The limitation is that many of the producers in the state don't have the capital to put the infrastructure in to be able to produce a concrete that will hit those performance thresholds. So it is out there. It is not proving to be sufficient to move the market towards lower carbon, low cement concrete. Sorry, lost sound.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just missed that last question, sorry.
No, I said, so if you were kind of, just blue skying this, how, what kind of an incentive program would be ideal?
Tax credit, a grant, could be something coming from the Green Bank, something to allow concrete producers to build that infrastructure.
And have you had conversations with the Green Bank?
Not directly on this issue. I actually don't know what communications my firm has had in the past.
Are you the principal of the firm, Christopher?
No, I'm a project developer.
Where are you located?
The factory is in Beacon Falls and the firm is based out of New Rochelle, New York.
I'm sorry, I missed that last part. What's New Rochelle?
Our firm is based out of there, so our corporate office is there, but our factory is in Beacon Falls.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much. This is very instructive. Yes, Representative Mesker.
Taking advantage to have you here. So I should look at the positive, even though it's a supplement to the cement as an aggregate, right?
Not specifically an aggregate, sorry. It's an alternative to the cement. So the cement is the very polluting aspect of a concrete mix. It's about 85% of the CO2 emissions in a concrete mix.
Right.
So replacing that cement is the key way to reducing carbon.
And what kind of ratio of replacement is it?
Our material can go up to about a 50% replacement.
Okay.
The standard in the industry for other cementitious materials is around 15. And that's, a fantastic start, but getting it to closer to 30 or 40 will be what we need to do to really move the needle as an industry in carbon reduction.
Basically, what we're talking about is it's got both lower carbon footprint, but it's got higher sustainability and durability than standard cement, right?
Yes, it does. The concrete results. The material results in a concrete that does perform better. So you should see a longer lasting material. And if you're able to build infrastructure with the material that lasts longer, you've obviously got lower repair costs, lower replacement costs, and you can amortize that over more years and get a much better.
And then lastly, is your location a barrier? Because from what I understand in the cement business, normally it's always developed or produced pretty close to the waterways for the cost of freight. And is your transport cost a big factor versus the cement companies or the people who are using cement?
Our transport is not really causing the problem. We're fairly centrally located in Beacon Falls. We can access the entire state very well. If we are trying to send product to New York City or Boston, it can be, require a little bit of a premium. All of the cement, none of it is produced in Connecticut. All the cement that's used in Connecticut is brought in, and those are very large multinational corporations with very well-established distribution networks and cost of capital. So that is a challenge that we have to fight against every day. But our location is quite services Connecticut very well.
And you have an estimate of, if we're looking at this on, I think my co-chair asked blue sky. So what would it translate to as a percentage of, into like what discount or price differential to incentivize? I mean, because a discount could conceivably go to you or a discount to the cement manufacturer to incentive. We're looking to incentivize storage. Or you're looking to incentivize storage. We're listening at this point. The question becomes, what's the percentage price differential, presumably cheaper for your product, to incentivize those companies to build the storage, right? Right now, if they're flat in pricing or close to flat in pricing with a slight differential, yours, I think, ultimately higher. The problem is that there's no incentive for them to build the storage. Do you have a guesstimate on that, percentage-wise? On the price?
That's every business will do their own equation on cost and benefit. I really that's a tough question for me to answer. I have heard numbers, as much as $50 a ton that would be required to truly create the incentive to get people to take this on themselves. So somewhere, the incentive the state would need to put forward wouldn't have to be that significant, because they would be providing the catalyst for these concrete producers to make that change. So
And
it's a tough question.
At 50 a ton, what's that percentage differential?
About a third. Almost a third.
Almost a third. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then, Chris, I would just say that, all of this conversation, which is very much top of mind regarding resiliency and dealing with climate and weather events and so forth, that this is probably an opportunity to, connect with Green Bank and the resiliency initiatives. But thank you very much. And this has been very instructive. Appreciate your advocacy and your work. And
Thank
if there are no further questions, thank you for being with us. And we will now invite Duncan Markovich, who is with Butterways LLC. Is Duncan in person? Good, what is it? Good afternoon? Yes.
Hello, good afternoon. Chairpersons Hartley, Meskers, and the respective members of the Commerce Committee. I appreciate the chance to express my support for both HB 6782 and as well as HB 6784 with their foci towards industrial hemp and low carbon building materials. I think these bills offer a significant cornerstone to bolster this emerging industry growth and an opportunity for Connecticut to reconnect with an agricultural powerhouse already deeply rooted in our state's history, while simultaneously pioneering new advancements to drive a bright future. I would be remiss without also extending my support for HB 5008 and HB 6737. My mother was born in Saba on our naval station my grandfather flew for, and for most of my life I've been a sailing instructor, and I urge this committee to always protect the preservation of the Amistad. Thomas Jefferson said, hemp is one of the greatest, most important substances of our nation. When it comes to industrial hemp, I couldn't agree more. In September of 2022, the United States Building Guild also agreed by establishing industrial hemp and hempcrete as approved building materials. My name is Duncan Markovich, owner and founder of Better Ways LLC, 2019 founded native Connecticut cannabis education and therapeutics store in my hometown of Branford. I'm a proud Shoreline Chamber of Commerce member, a Connecticut Cannabis Small Business Alliance board member, and a multi-state cannabis activist and speaker. I hold a BA in International Relations with a minor in Spanish from Western New England College and an MBA in Sustainable Business from Marylhurst University. And I have had a lifelong commitment to the stewardship and preservation of the natural world around us. I'm very passionate about this bill, HB 6782, And I wanted to thank Representative Hughes, Anderson, and Shannon for their support in co-sponsoring this bill in its language. Federally subsidizing industrial hemp, similar to other crops like hay through the Department of Agriculture, would empower this committee and our state to create a profound fiscal mechanism to re-enable the industrial hemp industry to take off once again here in Connecticut. This approval would provide major opportunities for our agricultural sector, entrepreneurs, specialized manufacturing and technology, our muchly needed updated electrical infrastructure redesign, transportation infrastructure, a specialized workforce training program, state university research and internship opportunities, and a farming leasing program. But most importantly, the protection of our environment and the means to protect our ample coastline. I understand there's some concern from Commissioner O'Keefe and the Department of Economic and Community Development as to the funding or capacity to conduct such a study. But I feel with our new $55 billion state budget and $260 million in COVID interest, I feel the funds might be available somewhere. To alleviate this issue, I suggest that the preliminary research study should be conducted by the existing robust professional network of human resources here in Connecticut, modeled similarly after an existing state 2014 study that has already been conducted by the Department of Consumer Protection. We would simply update that. After speaking to my colleagues this morning, there is ample research evidence amassed in our state that would support the approval of this endeavor. Assets like myself, Hector Gerardo, Michael Goodenough, Jeff Wenzel, Professor Berkowitz from UConn, and many other members within our professional network have already created a robust scope for this study, and we have begun compiling information to submit to this committee. Thank you all for your time today. I offer the committee the opportunity for any questions or comments.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here with us. Representative Meskers will have the first question.
So I'm trying to understand the business model, right? So there, to my mind, so far, we're not producing industrial hemp in Connecticut in production yet.
We are actively, our colleague Hector has been awarded several grants to build a manufacturing facility, which is required for the upcycling of raw hemp to then into manufactured products. The working with hemp has already been established in the state, especially through UConn for a while. So it's ongoing. I think with there's great need to keep jobs and create jobs in this state. Reflexively, I'm usually speaking to general law and judiciary on cannabis bills with respect to the hemp that's been grown in Connecticut specifically for CBD. That industry, unfortunately, has been shuttered over the last 2 years of legislative sessions, very restrictive bills that have hurt Connecticut small business owners and Connecticut farmers. So I would hope that in the spirit of our state remaining strong, bolstering our universities, inspiring people into an entrepreneurial lifestyle and creating more jobs and businesses for our state, that shifting funds from DOAG at the federal level to create some kind of price for farmers for raw industrial hemp, and then the quality is of that hemp being produced is the oversights through DOAG and UConn, and then students can get internship opportunities to work on those farms. So if you're a landowner or a failing farmer or a farmer who was working in the hemp CBD space, who has had opportunity taken away, I think this would provide a great opportunity, as well as the gentleman who was speaking before me about the low carbon concrete. There's many applications. We are a specialized tech driven state. Our electrical infrastructure needs revamping. Hemp graphene batteries and hemp graphene inverters are widely sought after. So by doing this, not only are you supporting what's existing and ongoing, but you can really open this up for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm just confused.
Okay.
And it's not in any way meant to be critical. If there was a demand across the country for the hemp product, manufactured industrial hemp, presumably the private sector would be investing in the factories, right? Or presumably there'd be a demand for the growers to ship it to those locations. I'm trying to figure out the scope of an investment I make or would consider making
Sure.
in an industry. You know, am I kickstarting the entire seed capital from supporting farmers to building factories to developing usage for the product and trying to create the entire demand scale? Or are there pieces, like, am I kickstarting the engine that's going to turn on and rev in 2 seconds? Or is this a developmental project that we're looking at? I read a fair amount of the financial press. I'm just, I haven't heard about, and what the only thing, my only familiarity with hemp is obviously either for recreational use or actually its ability to consume toxins from the soil and work to unpollute sites.
Yes.
But, and I know hemp in the 20s or rope, jute, manufacturing of all clothing, but I don't know what the demand looks like. That if we're putting in 5 cents, is there 95 cents worth of demand out there? Just,
Certainly.
that's what I'm looking for
Col-
with a rack tech.
Colorado and Wyoming would be great states to look after. I can send you that language as well. Outside of the United States, Canada is next, and then China when it comes to
Industrial hemp.
Industrial hemp, yes.
But is it that Colorado and Wyoming have instituted support mechanisms, or is there a natural industry there?
Both.
Okay, because I want to look at the model.
Certainly.
And see if their investments are taking off, or if I'm asking for seed capital for something with potential.
I understand what you're saying. I know the demand here in Connecticut will be for coastline protection. That's already in place. There are some sites already using industrial hemp for that.
Basically as a netting on protective soil erosion, et cetera.
A netting, a barrier, coastal homes, again, snapping into the concrete elements of shoreline homes, real estate, commercial properties, et cetera. The soil reclamation that you mentioned, I know in Hamden, Yukon, and Deep are using industrial hemp to remove harmful toxins. It was a firearms manufacturing site that's now being converted into a not-for-profit memorial garden for a young gentleman who unfortunately lost his life. So Senator Cohen asked me a similar question that you posed. What's the demand? Who's doing this already? What are the rates? The information is certainly out there. I am hoping that we can create some newer industrial laws to expand on what's needed with the transportation committee. Our roads, our buildings, asphalt, concrete. I don't really see where this won't be needed.
I'd appreciate, anything particularly on Colorado and Wyoming and Canada, send it to the committee through our clerk. I definitely want to read up on it.
Yep.
I'm
It's
agnostic. I'm just trying to figure out where.
Understood. Again, in the 30s, this was Popular Mechanics looked at this as $1 billion industry then. And then we paused for 80 years because there were several industries that were greatly threatened by one plant.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Meskers. Further comments from the committee? Sorry about that. You mentioned, funding and reference and possible, COVID dollars. They are expended out the door and over. And that's probably the biggest challenge of this budget in terms of dealing with the funding that is not there any longer, and the state's inability to supplant. So, but so there was a 2014 study that was done by Consumer Protection, you said?
Yes. Yep.
Just
In the same scope, what federally legalizing and subsidizing industrial hemp would look like for the state and the benefits. I think that study has good guardrails for its scope. Updating it wouldn't take much effort or initiative. As I said, colleagues of mine who are already doing this. I mean, this study is ongoing. It's a living study. So I think that the updated numbers and recommendations would be very easy to ascertain without the Department of Economic Community Development's efforts or energy. I mean, I would love to give them the report as well. But I know that was Commissioner O'Keefe's concern was, we don't have the capacity or the funding for this. I don't think that's the ask. I think it's more of the leadership and the oversight of how can we move forward with this.
I hear you. I'll just reference another initiative, different but similar in view of what the end goal was to demonstrate the strength of an industry and the effects. And it was back 4 years ago. It was the realtors who took it upon themselves to try to demonstrate the economic effect of particular legislation that Connecticut was operating under, namely the Transfer Act. And the association and its members pulled together the numbers and put together a report that maybe they would have asked the Department of Economic Development to do, but they would not probably undertake it because of, their bandwidth. But it was a very influential report in helping to advise and make some decisions legislatively going forward. So I don't know if there's an association that exists of, the hemp industry growers, but if so, that might be a place to be. And as you point out, there is a baseline in 2014 to begin to update that to demonstrate the presence, the importance, and the potential of the industry.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thanks for being with us.
Thank you, guys.
If there are no further questions, we would like to invite Freedom Giraldo, also a hemp farmer. I don't know if she's with us. Okay. All right. That brings us to Connor Cooper of Carbon Built Jolly Concrete. Okay. You have the floor, Connor. You're with us.
Excellent. You hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you to Chairperson Hartley, Chairperson Meskers, and distinguished members of the Commerce Committee. Appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of HB 684. As you mentioned, my name is Connor Cooper. I am the Chief Commercial Officer of a company called Carbon Built. We are a manufacturer of low carbon concrete masonry products and concrete products more generally. Previously, I had served as president of Oldcastle APG's Northeast Division, so I've spent nearly 2 decades in the Northeast marketplace, and in particular in New England with a focus. On February 3rd, we purchased Jolly Concrete and Block, located in Danielson, Connecticut, and we're excited to be bringing our low carbon concrete manufacturing technology to the state. We also have intended and are in the process of relocating our headquarters from California to Danielson as well, to headquarter out of the plant and locate our lab there moving forward. As a new producer of concrete products in Connecticut with a deep focus on decarbonization, we fully support the legislation to incentivize contractors and subcontractors to buy low carbon concretes, and would love to help the state meet any of their own policies that call for low carbon concrete to be used on projects. An incentive for contractors could help us to offset some of our retrofit costs, which includes things like installing new storage silos, which was mentioned previously by the folks at Urban Mining, and also look at other things around testing, QC, conveying, batching, wide range of different things that can be put into plant to upgrade the technology to be able to support implementation of low carbon concretes. So with that, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify, and happy to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there questions? Yes, Mr. Co-Chair.
So first, thank you for your testimony, and that was music to my ears from California to Connecticut. You couldn't have said something better to me. Is your low carbon concrete in similar nature? Is it using recycled glass, or what's the component there?
Yeah, so we're excited to collaborate with Urban Mining as one of the ingredients that we could be using as part of our mix designs. Our technology that had originated at UCLA involved mineralization of CO2 into the products, using carbonation as a mechanism to not only gain strength, but also sequester CO2. But as we've evolved, we've become more and more engaged in the material science and trying to understand combinations of materials and chemistry that can displace cement. So, our goal is to stack whatever technologies we can at the plants that we own to be able to deeply decarbonize as possible. And we see using things like Positive and Urban Mining as one of those levers to help us reach our goals. Unfortunately, some of those levers also come with infrastructure costs to build out the plant, as well as potentially using materials that might cost more than cement today. And if there was incentives around incorporating those materials somewhere in the purchase chain or in the call it the commerce chain, we would be able to potentially do things to more deeply decarbonize than we would otherwise.
Okay. At some point, I'd like to have both a visit to understand the inputs and what, if we're using recycling materials or recyclable material and we're taking it out of the waste chain, I'd like to have that conversation to see what we're spending on a municipal basis for landfill versus what we could be able to deliver in the way of low-cost materials. It'd be interesting to me. And I have no further questions, comments.
Thank you, Representative Meskers. Are there further questions from colleagues? Seeing none. Thanks very much for being with us, Connor. We'd like to now invite Nicholas McGee, Dark Star Marine Hardware. Yes. Oh.
Hello, all.
Nicholas.
My name is Nick McGee.
Yeah. You have the floor, sir. Did we just lose Nick?
You might have muted, or he's gone.
Yeah.
Hello.
You have the floor. You can. Hey, Nick, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. We're waiting for your testimony, sir.
Great. Thank you. Hello, all. My name is Nick McGee, and I represent Dark Star Marine Hardware, a small business operating out of the startup space at Makehaven. I'm here to speak in strong support of Bill 1179 because the opportunities provided by Makehaven have been instrumental to my success as an entrepreneur. My first exposure to 3D printing was at Makehaven in 2017. At the time, I was working at a leading aerospace manufacturer here in Connecticut, yet I still didn't have access to this emerging technology. Through Makehaven, I was able to learn, experiment, and develop my skills. But beyond printing, what really set me up for success was access to industrial grade tools, especially metalworking equipment like the water jet cutter, CNC machines, and welding tools. These are resources that are otherwise out of reach for most small startups and individuals, yet they are critical for prototyping and production. Because of this access, I've grown as an engineer and an entrepreneur, becoming a NASA award-winning designer and building a successful small business fabricating parts for the marine industry. My key products are brackets and accessories for mounting Starlink satellite antennas, providing reliable internet access for boats and remote locations. Today, my business not only supports me, but also my part-time employee and the mother of my child. I look forward to continuing to grow my business and my family right here in Connecticut. I want to produce locally, sustainably, and competitively for the marine industry, a global billion-dollar sector with room for innovation. This bill would ensure that more entrepreneurs like me have the tools, resources, and space needed to create, manufacture, and contribute to Connecticut's economy. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Nick. Points well taken. Yes, you're the kind of entrepreneur that makerspaces are so pivotal for. If I might ask, how long were you located there at the makerspace location?
So I've been a member since 2017, but I recently started to rent space in the incubator in October of last year, or of 2023.
And you are still there?
Yes, I'm still there. Yeah, primarily because it does provide me access to those tools that I use to fabricate and create. So I rent a space upstairs in the incubator area. So I contribute to the community as well as have access to the tools that allow me to produce products.
And how does that work? Access to the resources, the tools. Do you have to sign up? Is it limited how long you can use them? Is there kind of competition within the environment for use of them?
Sure, there can be at crowded times, but I often find it easily accessible. Each tool requires a badging operation. So the more sophisticated tools like the CNC machines require you to get checked out and certified with a member of the staff. And then we log into the machine, we produce the part that we're looking to fabricate, and then we'll either pay for that material or the time, the usage on the machine if necessary. Yeah, so it's a relatively simple process.
Well, thank you very much, and best of luck in your endeavor, and as you continue to scale and grow. Thanks for being with us, Nick. If there are questions from colleagues, seeing none, we'll move on to our next speaker, Stefana Preacher, Better Together Connecticut, the director. And in person, no? Do not see Stefana. If not, we will move on to Ivisia Ivis Correa Brown, Good Trouble Advocates. Ivis.
It's afternoon now.
Yes, it is.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me to speak today. I'm not going to be long. So I wanted to express my support for several bills, starting with 6782. I hope the committee does notice this is a bipartisan bill, which Connecticut, you can say it's bipartisan, it's really not. So to have bipartisan support on this is a really big deal. It's already federally legal. And we can do more to support small business in Connecticut, which is why I also support SB 1178. Centralized information will help small business owners. People like to joke that Connecticut isn't friendly to small business whenever something controversial comes up. So we should be doing our best to change that perception of Connecticut. I also support HB 5008, the Puerto Rican Trade Commission. Connecticut has the largest population per capita of Puerto Ricans outside of the island. and we should do whatever we can to foster trade with that island. And finally, HB 6737, the Amistad bill. The Amistad does stand as a testament to the resilience of humanity. It is an important part of Connecticut history, and we should also be doing our best to teach that history to our students. Thank you.
Vicia, thank you very much. So you have me intrigued here. And thank you for your support on a number of bills this morning. Good Trouble Advocates. What do you do?
So we mainly focus on, so it's every member of BLM 860 has their own organization. Mine's is for the concerns mostly of inner city families as well as cancer prevention.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for your leadership and advocacy on very important initiatives. Comments, questions from my colleagues? Yes, Representative Meskers.
Thank you for waiting patiently to testify. And you're testifying both, I guess, in your role as executive director, but as a resident of the state. So
Yes.
it's always good to hear from the public and to hear from you in your official position as well. So your comments will be taken to heart, and I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
And seeing no further questions, thank you again for being with us. I'd like to invite Christopher Cotulio, ONG. Is he remote, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Chairperson Hartley, Chairperson Meskers, and distinguished members of the Commerce Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 6784, an act establishing incentives for contractors to use low-embodied carbon concrete. My name is Christopher Cotulio, and I hold a master's degree from UConn in civil engineering. I'm the Material Sustainability Specialist at ONG Industries, the largest concrete producer in Connecticut. In 2021, ONG adopted the use of Positive, an innovative cement replacement derived from post-consumer recycled glass at all 8 of our concrete production plants in Connecticut. ONG utilizes Positive daily in almost all of our concrete deliveries. We were an early adopter of this recycled glass material because we are committed to reducing the embodied carbon of our concrete. As the largest concrete producer in the state, ONG had the silo storage space and equipment necessary to accommodate this pioneering low-carbon material. However, most concrete producers lack silo space and frankly do not have the proper incentives to incorporate these new low-carbon materials. This silo problem has severely hindered the adoption of low-carbon concrete. Capital grants and tax credits for silos and equipment would facilitate and expedite the broad adoption of low-carbon concrete among producers across Connecticut. Connecticut's DAS and DOT have been trailblazers in low-carbon concrete through their policies and standard specifications. Now that these policies are in place, the concrete industry desperately needs additional infrastructure at their production facilities to accommodate these policies. This bill will give producers the financial assistance they need to make these sweeping changes quickly and help Connecticut achieve its carbon reduction goals. Although ONG is already using Positive, revolutionary low-carbon materials are developing rapidly every day to address the pressing issues of concrete carbon emissions. And although ONG is already committed to sustainability, grants and tax credits for new equipment would give us the ability to adopt even more of these developing materials and be an even greater part of the climate solution, similar to as Connor spoke about from Carbon Bill. So today I'm asking for your partnership with our industry to provide a cleaner environment for our Connecticut communities and to preserve that environment for future generations. Thank you very much for your climate leadership and for this opportunity to address the committee in support of this bill. With that, I'll open to any comments or questions.
Christopher, thank you very much for chiming in on this. And also, I really want to recognize your employer, ONG, who has been not only the largest concrete producer in the state of Connecticut, but also a leader on many initiatives, civic and otherwise, in the state. And so it is really important to have an, a corporation like ONG stand up and take on these carbon neutral environmental initiatives. And so for that, we here in the legislature recognize this and really appreciate your advocacy in helping to scale this throughout the state. Are there questions from colleagues? Thank you very much. And once again, please extend our comments to your leadership, because we are very much appreciative of their residency in the state and their contributions environmentally, civically, and throughout the state. Thank you.
I will. Thank you.
And so moving on, we would like to invite Frederick Lorthwire, who is here with us in person. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon,
No? Where's he from?
Co-Chair Stephen Meskers, Madam Joan Hartley, Vice Chairs MD Raymond, Madam Sharon Keat, Ranking Members Henry Morton and Chris Aniskovich. I hope I have that right. And lastly, all other members of the Commerce Committee. My name is Fred Lorthier, and I live in Greenwich, Connecticut. I grew up working in the trades through college and ultimately became an accountant 40 years ago. Today, I advocate for SB 1179, an act establishing the Connecticut Community Makerspace Program. I agree with and support the positive comments today regarding makerspaces. Makerspaces are places where things get made. I echo the comments that makerspaces fill the gap left by the decline of traditional shop and home economics classes in public schools. Many adults today were never offered the educational opportunity to learn basic life skills in sewing, woodworking, metal, and other disciplines. The most impacted by the loss of traditional shop and home economics classes are from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Not surprisingly, this demographic represents a significant portion of the membership at Makehaven and New Haven, where we do our best to keep fees affordable for all members. Makerspaces provide a low-cost opportunity to anyone to learn hands-on skills necessary in day-to-day life. Individuals join makerspaces because they want to make things. They want to learn. They want to better themselves. At Makehaven, training videos are a prerequisite to work in the space. Additionally, a safety orientation is required to use tools such as a table saw. I will add that the United States has 30,000 table saw accidents a year. Think about that. A lot of them are fingers. I was injured with a saw. I lived with this my whole life, so I know that all too well. Personally, I was a bit gobsmacked when one of our training videos explained the difference between a nail and a screw. Think about that. There's no shop classes. Some people just don't know. Okay. Makerspaces bring values of independent learning and capability, providing a pathway for those willing to work to access success. I believe that SB 1179 can bring much common ground to both sides of the political aisle, as these principles should appeal across political lines, supporting education, workforce development, and small business creation at a very, very low cost. This is something everyone can get behind, and a place where state support is highly leveraged for significant impact. It will be very valuable. In closing, I invite every member of this committee to visit Makehaven to see firsthand the impact that makerspaces have. I'll be happy to arrange a tour and answer any questions.
Thank you very much for being here and for your patience in it's sitting through the public hearing. It's been very instructive to hear first-handedly those who have been involved in the makerspace. While I don't have one in my hometown, I do have one in the neighboring community in Watertown, which I'd been trying to attract and co-opt to come into the city. But truly, they are a very important venue for entrepreneurs and for the economy. Representative Meskers, I know, wants to comment.
So first, you surprised me. I didn't know you were coming up to testify. I know Frederick. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement and exposure with Makerspace there in New Haven?
Yeah, I first and foremost, I grew up in a family where it lacked resources, and if something broke, you learn how to fix it, and you did fix it, everything. Right? And with that, as a youth, I leveraged that into working with the family business, not my family business. I became a glazier. I became a glazier at 12 or 13 using industrial equipment back then. I think some of the regulators would kind of go crazy over that, but I did very well in the trades. I did that through school and ultimately beyond school, because I found the trades actually paid more than a shirt and tie for quite a few years after I started wearing a shirt and tie. I always had an interest in woodworking, and I was looking for a place where I could have access to woodworking equipment. And a Google search led me to Make Haven, which was actually a fantastic place. And I use it personally to do some small woodworking projects. My last one is my desk at my office broke. The drawer broke, and I repaired it. But with there, I'm not I would say, the average user of the makerspace. It's based up in New Haven. It's a little bit of a hike from the town where I live. And I look to see, I see all the folks in the wood shop, and I can continually see a lot of people coming into the makerspace that this is truly their first experience working with tools. I'm talking hammers. I'm not talking heavy equipment at all. And I've always been a teacher. I've always been a helper to anybody my whole life. And I find myself often trying to assist anybody who might want some help in trying to get something done. And I realized that makerspaces such as Make Haven provide an opportunity for folks who really want to come in and learn how to use tools with some basic skill sets. Some, we've heard from others, about, entrepreneurial stuff, but, I kind of go back to the point of in the school systems that, they've eliminated shop, they eliminated home ec in so many things. You have so many children and youth and now adults who've graduated, just have no exposure at all to basic skill sets that you need at home, like how do you hang a picture? I hope that answered your question.
You did. I was very happy to see you come in and testify. I think it resonates with me, the commentary about the opportunity space in school and shop, which is why my questions, which I'll pursue going forward with makerspaces, like what is the connectivity to our youth, both disaffected or unexposed youth, to get them some of that exposure to move their needle forward for career opportunities. Because I agree with you. I think that in today's environment, the opportunities in those for those trades is very big, and we're missing out on it. So
I would agree. I'm not here to advocate for myself for Make Haven. I'm fine. But when I go into the space and I see others, I'm here to advocate for other people who come into the makerspace who really want to learn and better themselves.
well, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Meskers. Thank you for making the trek today.
You're most welcome.
And staying here to support this very important initiative. Small business, entrepreneurship, and quite frankly, teaching baseline skills in some instances.
that'd be great. Come down and visit. We're at the bottom of I-91 and 95. We're right off the highway. Anyone here is welcome. Please stop in. We would really, really like to give you a tour. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll take that as an invite. And thank you for being with us again, Frederick. I'd like to invite Christina Capitan, who is testifying remotely. Is Christina with us? Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm here. I made it. Good afternoon, Senator Hartley, Representative Meskers, and respected members of the Commerce Committee. My name is Christina Capitan. I'm here as a representative of the CT Canna Warriors, which is a grassroots cannabis advocacy organization located here in Connecticut. And we fight very hard for respect for cannabis and hemp. And I think that this bill that I'm here to support, which is HB 6782, to explore the economic potential of industrial hemp in Connecticut, is a step in the right direction to do that.
I had done something different. You know, like he was.
So hemp and cannabis both come from cannabis sativa, but they are fundamentally different. Industrial hemp contains less than 0.3% THC and is non-intoxicating, making it a very versatile agricultural commodity. It's used in textiles, biodegradable plastics, construction materials, and more. Meanwhile, cannabis grown for THC is used in Connecticut and across the nation for medicinal and recreational purposes. States that have embraced hemp are seeing job growth, innovation, and economic expansion. Yet in Connecticut, hemp farmers have been absolutely devastated over the last 2 years by restrictive CBD laws that were hastily enacted in the last 2 legislative sessions. And that has made it nearly impossible for these hemp farmers in our state to compete and thrive, essentially killing the Connecticut hemp industry and badly hurting the farmers. Instead of pushing farmers out of business, we should be working to position Connecticut as a leader in the hemp industry. A feasibility study is a necessary step to understand the full economic benefits of industrial hemp and to ensure our policies moving forward support farmers, small businesses, and a more sustainable green future for our state. So I urge you to please support HB 6782 and give Connecticut hemp farmers the chance to recover from the devastation of the last 2 years and to succeed within this industry. Thank you.
Christina, thank you very much. And thank you, by the way, for that kind of description of the distinction between the two, because that I think is helpful as a lot of people listen to this discussion. And are there comments from colleagues? Seeing none. Thank you again, Christina. And we will move on to Gino Laverghetta. Are you with us, Gino?
I am. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Well, good afternoon again, Madam Chair and all distinguished members of this committee. My name is Gino Laverghetta, and I am a principal with Cedar Village Development, which is a real estate organization that is quite active in Connecticut. I'm here today in support of Bill HB 6740. First off, I believe the bill is very apropos considering what I'm hearing coming out of Washington, which is that there's a good chance that they will be offering federal tax credits for those projects that in fact repurpose vacant commercial spaces. The question is, how do we get there? As a developer, when sizing up an opportunity that is an as of right, that's very straightforward, a very straightforward proposition. But when looking at, like, for example, we generally don't focus at the moment on vacant commercial space opportunities, mainly because you would have to look at potentially changing zoning, potentially needing a variance. And these things require time and they require money. And so as a developer, if we knew that there was an opportunity to defray some of these opportunity costs, we would be much more apt to take a look at repurposing the various vacant commercial spaces that exist across some of the more impoverished areas of Connecticut. I would also just add, I think it's very important that even if the bill were to be passed, that the municipality is going to have to be on board in terms of creativity. And that, again, whether that be a zoning change, a text change, or a variance that would allow for the repurposing of these currently vacant spaces.
Thank you very much, Gino, for being with us and your advocacy for this particular proposal. And I will just reference the governor's budget, which we just received as of the 7th, which identifies a new program specifically to address the large number of vacancies that we are seeing in our urban centers, and trying to light them up, repurpose them, and be innovative with them. So this is a conversation I think that we're having in a number of offices here at the state capitol. Questions from my colleagues, Representative Meskers.
Gino, thanks for the testimony. Zoning is always a polemical issue when you talk about various parts of the state and people's communities and their own self-determination. The commercial properties the problems we're seeing with commercial properties right now, is it principally financial at this point? I mean, what do we think the barrier is right now for redevelopment? Because, I'm trying to figure out what role the state should consider playing in redeveloping properties.
Sure. Again, I think we all know, post-pandemic, the way people work and where they work has changed, and that has led to a lot of vacant office space. And I don't know that you're going to get those refilled. And so I think you are seeing a push towards repurposing these spaces as potentially residential only, or maybe more of a mixed use opportunity. I also think, again, if we expand the scope, maybe hydroponic farming, which would bring, and I know that's going a bit off the reservation, but I just think there needs to be some creativity and openness to various alternative opportunities that might exist. Again, if I'm not buying commercial real estate right now. I think that is a very tough market to be in. I'm much more comfortable in the residential because to me, it's very simple. People need to live somewhere. And so again, I think if you open the possibility to these vacant commercial spaces being used for this need that everyone is talking about in terms of housing, it's excess capacity that is sitting there. And I think, with the right help and maybe some financing to support the investigation of such, you could be, bringing these properties back to life.
I don't want to lead you to this, but I'm trying to filter and listen to what you're saying. Because when I see retail spaces still seem somewhat compromised, retail commercial space, right? And when I see office space, I see it somewhat compromised. So the question in repurposing seems to be that, or either you're leading me or I'm leading you, I'm not sure which, that the residential is the best use of, or potentially the best use of the properties that are compromised. Is that what I should understand, you think?
No, again, I think that one should be looking very closely at a combination of mixed use, right? You can't ignore the fact that you need retail in a community for the development of that community, for infrastructure, if you will. So I'm not saying that it should be solely residential. I'm not. But I do believe that if you take something that may not be zoned for it and allow for it, but maybe call for there to be retail as well, you could get the best of both worlds.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Madam Chair, Representative Rochelle.
Thank you, Representative Meskers and Representative Rochelle.
Thank you very much, and thank you for testifying today. So I've heard a few concepts and as we start to endeavor with this bill, and I just wanted to get your feedback on some of the concepts I've heard regarding how we could be crafting this. One idea is to provide, sometimes with local municipalities, they provide tax incentives for redevelopment of spaces. And there was a discussion about having the state assist, especially these economically distressed municipalities, and being able to offer those incentives. Another option that I've heard is direct, no interest loans, so that as you're evaluating a space that you may want to redevelop, for example, to turn a empty commercial space into mixed use, having that funding to explore if that is feasible as an option, as another concept I've heard. And the third one I heard was to provide an incentive, almost like an earn as you grow, where if you're repurposing a space and it is a certain percentage of square feet, to say that the state will, as you redevelop, will give, say $5 per square foot for the repurposing in order to get you to that finish line and provide a reliable system where you must have the contract signed, you must be locked in to do the deal, that we're not doing clawbacks. Any thoughts or feedback on any of those concepts?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have framework in place, right? We just finished building 90 units in Derby, Connecticut, and it was a commercial space that was environmentally tainted. And with the work, we worked in conjunction with the municipality as well as NVCOG, and funds were provided to clean up the space. And then we were able to come in and do the development. And I think something along those lines would work. Like, again, we do work in other states as well, and I'm incredibly impressed with how Connecticut has figured out how to handle environmentally tainted properties. And I'm sure that if you use that as a framework, you could come up with something that would address the needs necessary to be able to size up a vacant commercial space and determine its best repurposed use.
Thank you very much for testifying today. It's very helpful.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Representative Rochelle. And thank you, Gino. Appreciate hearing your experience. And also for the recognition of essentially the Connecticut brownfields infrastructure, which is the backbone of so much of that repurposing and development. And are there further comments from committee members? Seeing none, thanks again, Gina, for being with us. I'm understanding Will Holman is back online. Will, you are with us, are you?
Yes, ma'am.
You have the floor, sir.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the Commerce Committee. My name is Will Holman. I am the CEO of OpenWorks, a nonprofit makerspace in Baltimore City. My friend and colleague, J.R. Logan, invited me to speak today as an expert outside witness. In 2020, we worked with our state Senator Cory McCray in the 45th District in Baltimore to introduce the Maryland Makerspace Initiative program into the Maryland General Assembly. The session was cut short because of COVID, and it did not get out of committee. In 2021, it passed one house, but did not make crossover. And in 2022, the MMIP finally passed with nearly unanimous votes in both houses of Maryland's legislature. It provided a $5 million appropriation to be dispersed over 5 years to support the expansion or establishment of makerspaces in the state of Maryland. So I'm speaking in support today of SB 1179. because it's basically modeled off of the legislation that we have successfully advocated for, passed, and are now working with here in Maryland. We are now, this spring will be the third fiscal year of the grant program, and we are undertaking a mid-program assessment. So by midsummer, we ought to have some pretty solid data on what the program has returned to the state. Until that data is in, I can offer data from our own space. We have a 34,000 square foot makerspace with 7 professional workshops, 110 co-working spaces, a lab, 2 classrooms, and a coffee shop in the lobby. We have been in existence since 2016. A 2024 study by the Coppin State University College of Business, which is an HBCU on the west side of Baltimore, found that we contribute $37.2 million in annual economic impact to the state of Maryland. That includes close to $2 million in tax receipts from state and local governments, and supports 352 jobs, about half of those in direct employment by businesses operating out of OpenWorks or our own employees, and then about half of those are kind of knock-on effects for associated enterprises. Since 2017, we have supported 338 small business starts, 46% of which were BIPOC owned and 44% of which were women owned. Both of those figures are about twice the national average. All of these facts and figures are contained in my uploaded written testimony for later reference. The one piece I wanted to add besides the economic development figures is our role as a resilience hub. So in 2020, we stood up an emergency manufacturing operation to produce PPE, namely face shields, using digital fabrication. From March to June of 2020, we produced 28,270 3D printed face shields, many of which were reused, sanitized and reused hundreds of times, lasting as long as 2 years for some of the hospitals and providers we gave them to. In 2021, we did a similar project, but making flat pack plywood desks for Baltimore City school children struggling with Zoom school. And from 2022 to the present, we've been involved in prototyping and developing a network of 14 benches in public spaces that have solar canopies where you can charge your phone and get free Wi-Fi. I bring all that up to say that OpenWorks has developed this new capability as a resilience hub, which is something that more and more states are interested in a time of climate change and other disruptions. We know these disasters will get more frequent, and having emergency manufacturing capability embedded right in communities where supply chain shortages are happening is a huge advantage in building a more resilient population in the face of disaster. Maryland and Connecticut are very similar sized states with kind of similar challenges, with once mighty manufacturing sectors that have declined. Yours is doing better than Maryland's, but ours has declined to just 4.5% of non-farm employment. And these economic development strategies of trying to attract very large outside companies, car companies and what have you, back into the state with tax breaks are very expensive and tend not to last very long. This 1,000 points of light strategy, where we can drive economic development from the grassroots up by seeding hundreds, if not thousands, of small businesses, by providing them access to expensive equipment, entrepreneurial supports, and ultimately a creative community where they can find collaborators, partners, and customers, I think is a much stronger strategy that keeps tax dollars and jobs in your state and kind of helps grow your manufacturing economy from the inside out. Thank you for your time and consideration today, and happy to answer any questions about our experience that might be relevant.
Well, Will, have you thought about coming to Connecticut?
Well, I'd love to. Yeah, it's just a short train ride away.
Well, that's a very, very impressive journey that you shared with us. You said that you provided your testimony to us, written testimony you did?
I did. Unfortunately, I'm testifying from my phone because I'm between meetings, so I wasn't able to kind of pull it up and speak at the same time.
Yeah, okay. Well, I just want to make sure that the members of the committee have the benefit, those who are off in other committee meetings at the time have the benefit of your testimony. Yeah, Representative Meskers, go ahead.
Yeah, fantastic testimony. Thank you. Questions for you, and because I want to look at the testimony and understand, the Maryland model. So presumably you're looking at providing space, entrepreneurial space, startup space. At some point, you're envisioning that they graduate. Yes.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And you probably aren't there yet because you've only been up and running about 2 or 3 years, right?
We were founded in 2016, sir.
Oh, okay. So do you see many people moving on to their own space, or are they still sharing space with you, with you? How does that progression work?
Yeah, so we have some folks that have stayed with us a long time, but we see about maybe 20% of our co-working studios turn over on an annualized basis. I'll offer one example of a story that's sort of what we're trying to seed. So a small company called MF Fire was founded by 2 University of Maryland graduates. They designed a new type of wood stove to be compliant with 2018 new EPA regulations on soot emissions that came out in 2018. They were first to market with this solution using essentially a catalytic converter in the wood stove. They were housed at OpenWorks for 2.5 years. They prototyped some of their technology in our metal shop and our CNC fabrication shop. And then they grew up and out of the space. They now have a manufacturing space in the southwestern part of the city. They employ 5 people locally. They get a lot of their manufacturing done in Indiana, and the parts are shipped to Baltimore for final assembly, QC, and shipping out. That's exactly the kind of story that we're trying to foster. And it's a company that's not going to, move to Virginia because somebody waved a tax break under their nose. They started here, they grew here, and they're thriving here. And that's because they had access to this extremely low cost on-ramp to starting their company at just the right time.
Perfect. And the second question, what's the engagement? We heard testimony before, and I'm interested in this. What's kind of engagement of either disaffected youth or those who don't have exposure? Like what's the outreach into the community for our high school and college age population?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at a high level, we educate about an average of 1,300 adults enrollments a year in our various classes, which are offered 50 weeks out of the year. And then we have a variety of youth programs. For high schoolers in particular, we have our longest running program is called Teen Maker Shop. Students meet twice a week after school for 3 hours all semester long. So it's a very, deep engagement. They learn digital design software, Adobe Creative Suite, and then they apply that to a variety of digital fabrication tools, including our laser cutter, our digital embroidery machine, and 3D printing. And then they use that to build a capstone project. So an example from a prior semester is that students made hoodies from scratch. So they had to measure their bodies, make a pattern, cut the fabric, sew it. Then they used Adobe Illustrator to make a logo and used the embroidery machine to put the logo on the hoodie, and then had a fashion show kind of at the end of the semester, right? So we've now been running that program since 2017, 2 semesters a year plus a summer session. And we've seen young people from there grow up and go to college. We've hired young people as technicians in our space, one of whom has gone on to become a full-time employee. And then we've seen others come back as users of this space as adults. They've rented studios to start their own businesses. What we find is Gen Z and Generation Alpha coming up behind them are often far more interested in entrepreneurship than they are in kind of the traditional definition of a good job, air quotes. And so one of the unique things about this model is we're equipping them with kind of a broad set of skills, letting them explore a couple different options about what they might be interested in. And then there's a choose your own adventure going forward. They could enroll in our adult classes. They could enroll in one of our workforce development efforts. They could go to college and boomerang back to us when they have an idea later in life. And that kind of flexible platform approach is something that a lot of policymakers are less familiar with because we're used to thinking of these programs in a siloed way. There's workforce development over here. There's entrepreneurship over here, small business support over there. When you bring them all under one roof in kind of a multi-dimensional space, we see a lot more kind of synergistic growth happening.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the testimony.
Will, so my co-chair is over here saying, wow. It's so very much appreciated. Let me just go back to understand. You talked about 5 million over 5 years from the state.
Yes, ma'am.
And then where's your other, so you have fees for your entrepreneurs who are coming in and, renting space. What other revenue source do you have?
Yeah, so to be clear, that $5 million did not go to OpenWorks. That was appropriated to TEDCO, which is a state agency that is kind of Maryland's, business and economic development agency that's kind of housed under the Department of Commerce. They mostly handle early stage startups. They have a seed investment fund and some business development and accelerator programs. So then TEDCO crafted a grant program and actually hands the money out to the spaces. So we're talking, they've done about 20 to 25 grants in the first 2 years of the program. No individual space can get more than $200,000 in a single fiscal year. And I could provide more information in writing to you all about how it was constructed with kind of this equity framework in mind at a later time if you're interested. In terms of our personal budget, we are about 50% user fees and about 50% grants, and our budget's about $2.2 million this year. To put that in context, it's about the same average cost of a public library per year on a national basis.
And just tell me about your grants. What are the sources of your grants?
So our main funder is an anchor funder, a small family foundation here in Baltimore that helped found the space and commits a certain amount to us each year. And then we get some state grants, both for programs such as workforce development, and then general operating support from the Maryland State Arts Council. And then, it's a bundle of smaller corporate gifts from local companies or branches of national corporations with a home in Baltimore and local philanthropy.
So do you have a full-time grant writer?
You're looking at them.
Oh,
yeah.
How many hats do you wear, sir?
Yeah. Too many. That is fair to say.
And so these are kind of like on an annual basis, which makes for a lot of pain points, I would think, in terms of planning.
Yes, it has been. We are now matured enough to start to win some larger multi-year commitments, but state funding in particular is taking a big hit this year. Maryland's budget is more dependent on the federal government than many states due to our proximity to Washington. So that's been an issue. And some of the sources of funding we've been able to access the last couple of years through ARPA funding is now drying up. And then we love Baltimore. I'm a lifelong Marylander and grew up in the area, but Baltimore, as many people know, has faced some challenges and isn't in great fiscal and isn't able to help a whole lot either. So we've really relied a lot on local philanthropy, and then of course user fees. I think the most instructive business model is a lot like a YMCA in that it's a heavily subsidized service. It's designed to reach everyone, but everybody pays something. We're not, you gotta put in a little bit at least to the level of your need.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Mesker.
So I just want to drill in a little bit further. So what I heard, and you can tell me how wrong I am, I heard 50% of your operating budget is fees. The balance is the state and nonprofits who provide you with space. And so is it roughly 50% the user fees, 25% from donations, if you will, nonprofit donations or charitable contributions, and 25% from city state? Is that kind of the breakdown of the 2.1?
I mean, at a high level, that's probably close to accurate. It's fluctuated a lot because, for instance, during COVID, we received PPP loans and some other government sources that were temporary.
Right.
So I would say, but on a lifetime basis, that's probably like a good average. Yes.
And it sounds like an incredible amount of engagement of the community. So I'm impressed with what you're doing, and I'm going to be reading very avidly your testimony. So I want to thank you.
Thank you. We'd love to have you down sometime.
Sounds like a road trip. Will, thank you. Further comments from committee members? Thank you so much for being with us. Very interesting story. I would.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Roger Soloway, the Director, Economic Development Director from the town of Derby.
City of Derby.
The city of Derby. I stand corrected. Thank you. Don't know what those population lines are, sir.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm delighted to be here. Just a little background. I'm an accidental economic development person. My background is engineering. I was general manager of John Deere for Europe and Africa, and got transferred to the United States to put Deere in shape, and then retired and moved to Connecticut, and didn't really know what to do myself. My wife wanted me out of the house. I met a guy you all know well called Norm Needleman, who's our first selectman. He said, why don't you come and take a look at economic development? So I did, and he sent me to DECD, and I met them and got involved. And one of my first projects was to help keep Honeywell in the state. And as you may know, they were kind of asking for a lot of money to move out, and I managed to go there and talk to them, get to know what they were trying to do. And since then, Honeywell is still in North Brantford. I became the North Brantford Economic Development Coordinator part-time. Honeywell has since doubled their employment in North Brantford. So that was good. I retired again, and a guy called David Lehman called me and said, why would you kind of retire? Have you thought about something like a distressed community, which I knew nothing about? And so he said, well, we have 25 distressed communities in the state, and 20% of those are in the Naugatuck Valley, which I didn't know much about. So I got to be meeting the sort of a search committee that was in process at the time in the city of Derby. Got hired, and that was just about 18 months ago. One of the first projects we got done was what Gina has just presented. That project has been actually in limbo for 5 years. We got a tax incentive program from the city of Derby, and with the help of DECD and the Brownfields Group, we got the funding to do the remediation of the industrial site that they built on. It was opened. It took 12 months to build that 90-unit operation. It was opened in October. It was 100% occupied by the end of November. So that was a pretty successful project. Also in Derby, we have another big project close to being occupied. It's another $16 million investment, again with tax incentive program from the city, and it'll be open in the spring. This is Trolley Point, which you know very well. So in the course of sort of 18 months, we've got over 200 new apartments, and Trolley Point has already got a long waiting list. So that size development is going fine. But Derby, and at the whole Naugatuck Valley, as you probably know, is a very distressed area of the state. And, you know, for us in Derby to try to attract grants, it's not easy. We've applied for a number of grants, the Connecticut Investment Fund, the Connecticut Challenge Fund, and in most of those cases, it requires a city match. That's difficult to do in a distressed community, getting the match to get those grants. So we don't really get the advantage of those supports. So this particular bill is very interesting because I see it in the Derby community. We have sort of three levels of investment. We have the investment level that Gino's just presented, and we have a couple of others coming along in the pipeline of that size. They are generally able to self-fund. They look to the community to provide some kind of tax abatement, and that's worked pretty well. The lower level is kind of where we are seeing local people coming in and trying to rehab properties and coming to the city and saying, is there any way you can help us? We generally cannot. In the middle, there are a bunch of properties that can be repurposed. And that's really the beauty of 6740. If we can find ways of helping those intermediate size developers repurpose some of the properties we have, I'm sure we're going to see the community growing much faster than it has done.
First of all, Roger, welcome to Connecticut.
Thank you.
And we don't want you to leave. And David Lehman knows what he knows. And so that was brilliant of him to recruit you. And as a neighbor to Derby, representing Waterbury and also Naugatuck, I am very, very well acquainted with the landscape and the challenges. You know, the former industrial site, Waterbury being the brass center of the world in its day, and now just the vestiges of those old industrial sites which have in large fashion been abandoned. And so, yeah, this is something that I'm always preaching. So well, then let me just ask you, so ideally, what tools would you need in this particular venture that you are working on now?
Can I give you an example of
Please.
What happened this past week? There is a wholesale bakery group that's quite a good size, and they're established in New York State. And they are looking at a property in Derby to move something like 25 new jobs into the city of Derby. They came up with an offer for a piece of property, which is less than the owners are asking for. So they came to the city and said, is there any way we can get either a low interest loan or some kind of grant to bridge the gap to bring our business to Derby? At this point, we don't have any. So that would be the sort of an example where the city could perhaps pass through a low interest loan from the state to bring in a new company, bringing in 25 or so new jobs.
So in that example, have you gone to the Department of Economic and Community Development? They have their Boost program now.
Right.
It was under David, actually, that we did a restructuring to change SBX, Small Business Express, because the thought was we, the state, were competing with banks and you know, the underwriting financing business.
Very much aware of the Small Boost program. We work with Lindy Gold, maybe you know Lindy, who's a very active member of DCD. And I think we've had over $500,000 into the community from that program in the city of Derby. A little bit of a challenge in this case, it's coming from out of state. So, you know, we haven't figured out how to do this yet. So
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Comments from committee members? Yes, Representative Meskers.
I'll echo my chair's commentary. Given what you shared with me of a storied professional career and your disposition, willingness to give back to the community is laudable. Have we had conversations at all with the Small Business Administration? Is there opportunity space with the federal government or with our federal delegation, do you think?
When I started in Derby, I spent some time at CBIA and DECD, just trying to get to understand what was currently available. They've been very cooperative. We are looking at an industrial park and working with Advanced CT right now. And as Representative knows, we have a visitor coming in from Holland later this week, interested in bringing a business into Connecticut. And we are trying to see whether we can bring this into an industrial park. We have 30 acres of undeveloped space, which is quite a lot of undeveloped space in terms of Derby. And ideally, we'd like to try to convert that into a kind of an advanced manufacturing tech center. We do have at our high school one of the few advanced manufacturing technology centers in the state, and that's attracted the people from Holland. So yes, we are pursuing various avenues at this point.
So I can't tell you how helpful it is to get testimony, but I am scratching my head and trying to figure out the path forward. But it's good to hear you and hear your experience. In general, I think both Dan Now and David Lehman have done a great job at DECD. But it's always good for you to come before us in Commerce as, the co-equal competitive side of the branches of government.
Right.
So we can understand the process and scratch our heads about the ideas and the potential. So we probably should have that conversation in more depth with you about what you've explored, where the roadblocks are, because the question becomes too, are there avenues to apply, or are there issues with the statutes that we can facilitate to make sure that this is not a repetitive process? One of my problems that I find in the state legislature working with the government is that many times all of us will be advocates and we'll solve a problem, but we won't solve a process. So if there's an issue and an obstacle, not only do I want to understand the obstacle and solve the problem, but make sure that the process moves forward, because it sounds like we're at a crossroads with that financial opportunity with the bakery. And I'd like to see if anything we could pursue on that, because that sounds very interesting. So I appreciate you sharing. I don't think I have another question.
Rep. Rocha.
Thank you so much for coming today, Mr. Soloway. I thank you, especially because you come from my district. Derby is one of my two towns, and it's the best littlest city in the state. It is quite literally by size the smallest city in the state of Connecticut, but also quite rich in many, many ways as far as the people and the community we have there. So there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you. One is the same question I kind of had for Gino earlier is, you mentioned how the challenge, and I'm very familiar with this challenge of, it is pretty common for a municipality to offer tax incentives to bring a business in, but when you're economically distressed, your residents cannot necessarily, the town cannot necessarily afford to provide those incentives, which means that the town is disadvantaged, and then it's further disadvantaged because it doesn't have the bootstraps to make these offers. Of that option, trying to find some type of way to provide support for municipalities in that way, or there's kind of either doing a no interest loan or build as you grow, where the state provides incentives for redevelopment. Do you have any feedback on any three of those concepts? What you think, how this would fit into what you're doing?
But perhaps another example, you may know, the former headquarters of United Illuminating is in Derby, and it's right behind the city hall, and it's been empty for 12 years, I think. There's a smaller number of apartments in it. And so I approached the owner of it, who is out of state, and said, look, what are you going to do here? This is a nice piece of real estate right beside the sort of downtown. And his first comment was, well, what are you going to do to get me to look at this? Okay. And so it's a relatively small investment, but he is now convinced that Derby's on the move. He's seen the other things happening. He's seen the road widening, other projects DOT are doing in the community. And so we crafted a tax incentive program to get him started. And when you look at the numbers, I mean, what he's currently paying in taxes is pretty minimal because it's an occupied property. And even with a tax incentive in which starts at 50% once certificate of occupancy has been given, the cash flow that follows from it, if he's going to put, as he is, 3.6 million into it, totally overwhelms what we would be giving away, if you like. So it's a matter of really looking at what you're going to get over the next 25 years as against what are you giving in the very short term. And we found out that the calculation, even in the first year with a 50% tax rebate, that's almost 10 times more taxes than he's paying currently. So that particular program makes sense to the community. So we're using that where we can. But, you know, you're right. You just can't keep going back to the Board of Aldermen and asking for tax incentives. We have to find some other ways, particularly for the, you know, his size is 32 new apartments. He's right in that middle section that I talked about earlier. And ideally, if there was some other form, maybe a low interest loan, rather than the city have to give in tax incentives, that would have made the case easier.
Thank you, and thank you for all the work you're doing. We're quite lucky to have you, such a heavy hitter in our little town. We know the Valley punches above its weight, and I'm so happy you're on board with us.
Thank you. It's a fun place to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Rochelle. And I dare say that there's going to be a lot more action there as we continue to scale the Waterbury Naugatuck line, and as people look for reasonable communities in which to relocate. We saw this during COVID, and I think the trend continues. And so the Naugatuck Valley, probably in one way to describe it, is hot.
Yes, I mean, just what Gina was just describing. Most of the new residents that moved in came from out of the city. They are coming from Fairfield County and otherwise.
I see it every day in Waterbury and in Naugatuck. Yeah.
Right. One of the projects, if I can just add a little more, we're working very closely with David Corris. You probably know that David is running the new murder program. And that's exciting because we have a new railroad station expansion going on. That is going to give us some other sort of incentives. However, it's sort of restricted to within a half a mile of a transit center. So sort of extending Murda into more than a half a mile might be the way to do this.
Thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we've had the benefit of David's expertise on this committee many times, most recently with our work on updating state historic preservation operations in the state. Thank you so much for being with us, Roger, and for your work. Great to have you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
No further comments from colleagues. Thanks very much. And I'd like to now ask, is it Charles Venator Santiago from the University of Connecticut, who has dropped in on us.
Thank you.
And you have the floor, Charles.
Good afternoon, Chair Hartley and Chair Mark Meskers, and members of the committee, of the Commerce Committee. Thank you for this opportunity, and apologies for this back and forth, but it's been a sudden process. My name is Charles Venator Santiago, and I'm the director of the Puerto Rican Studies Initiative, which is a research initiative for civic engagement and public policy at the University of Connecticut. And I was asked to provide recommendations in support of HB 5008 on Puerto Ricans residing in Connecticut and the broader impact that it's going to have, or it could potentially have, in Connecticut. I submitted a testimony. I just want to read an abridged version of what I submitted. As a matter of background, part of what's happening here is that between 1898 and 1901, the United States invented a new territorial status to govern Puerto Rico and the other territories that allows the United States to treat Puerto Rico as a foreign country for domestic or constitutional purposes when it's convenient. This process was developed between 1898 and 1901, and Congress has never changed the status of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico remains an unincorporated territory that can be governed as a foreign country for a whole range of things when convenient. And for economic purposes, at times it has been governed as a foreign country. And this opens a number of possibilities for commerce between Puerto Rico and Connecticut. As of 2016, Congress enacted legislation called PROMESA and imposed a fiscal oversight and management board that controls the government's economic development and economic expenditures in general. That fiscal oversight board is still in play and will continue to operate in Puerto Rico for the foreseeable future. That means that Congress has an oversight of all investments and all infrastructure development by the government of Puerto Rico today and will continue to do so. The Fiscal Oversight Board is at its second phase. They have a number of resources, or at least based on my last conversation prior to the arrival of the Trump administration, they had a number of multi-million-dollar resources to rebuild the local economy. But they have a strict rule where they want projects that are feasible and well documented in order to support them. Having said this, in addition, I think it's important to recognize that Connecticut is the state with the largest Puerto Rican population in the state of Connecticut, in the United States, I'm sorry, percentage-wise, in the sixth state with the largest population in the nation. This means that since 1850, Puerto Ricans have been traveling to Connecticut and settling in Connecticut. And since the 1950s in particular, we've seen an increased growth of the Puerto Rican population in Connecticut. So we were recently asked to provide a study or to research the trade bill that's been proposed. We have not yet been able to identify key sources of data that can provide us with a comprehensive analysis. However, based on a number of conversations, we have been able to identify a multi-billion-dollar trade possibility between Puerto Rico and Connecticut. We have identified that Connecticut, at least in 2023, was exporting about $15.8 billion in a number of industries. In the case of Puerto Rico, there are multiple corporations that have subsidiaries or are operating in there, including Henco Corporation, headquartered in Rocky Hill, Hubbell Incorporated, based in Shelton, Connecticut, Hamilton, Sunstrand, Tradewind Aviation, and Pratt & Whitney, among a number of other infrastructure, or a number of other corporations operating in Puerto Rico. This is particularly interesting because while Puerto Rico can be governed as a foreign country, it's also within the United States for defense purposes. So that opens the possibility for all kinds of different defense projects in Puerto Rico and in Connecticut, in addition to the small business relationship that has been flourishing for the better part of a century. In terms of the educational opportunities, I have to say, I have worked personally in memorandums of understanding between the University of Connecticut and various universities in Puerto Rico. What we do know is that several institutions in Connecticut have been working in a number of exchanges, I should say. This trade bill would create an opportunity to formalize a number of academic exchanges between various universities in Puerto Rico and the state of Connecticut, which I think are really beneficial because Puerto Rico is the only major territory, sometimes governed as a state, where Spanish is the primary language, giving our students an opportunity to learn Spanish and live in Spanish in part of the United States. All residents of Puerto Rico are U.S. citizens, and Puerto Rico is essentially, when convenient, governed like a state or a foreign country, it depends. And the beaches are beautiful. As a matter of closing, I want to support the Trade Commission because I think this opens an opportunity to formalize more economic exchanges in what might become a very welcoming environment for corporations. And I say this because during the mid to late 90s, a lot of corporations left Puerto Rico because of the North American Free Trade Agreement and migrated to Mexico. And now there's a conversation about returning to Puerto Rico because of the potential trade tariffs that would be imposed by the United States. So here we have an opportunity to have a sort of triangular relationship between Mexico, Puerto Rico, and Connecticut that could be beneficial to both Puerto Rico and Connecticut. In closing, as I said, part of the challenge is we still need to figure out the economic data, but I think this Trade Commission might open that possibility to dig in further. And it would be my great pleasure to support this initiative in whatever ways we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles, and thanks for being here with us. And yes, in support of this bill, 5008. So let me just ask you, do you see yourself as being part of this commission?
Only if I'm needed. I'm already part of one commission and I'm working a lot, but if I can support, we will. The Yukon Puerto Rican Studies Initiative is one of 3 research initiatives in the United States, and we're the only one doing public policy work. So I can see ourselves providing technical support.
Technical.
Research.
So the Yukon Puerto Rican initiative, it's an institute, did you say?
So we were funded about 3 years ago with ARPA funds, and then we received a small grant. We are a research institute within the University of Connecticut that focuses primarily on Puerto Ricans in the state of Connecticut.
I see. So you had initial ARPA funding, and that was 3 years ago. What have you had since?
So we received a small grant from the legislature, sponsored by Representative Minnie Gonzalez.
I see. And in the out years?
So we have been, we spent the past 2.5 years building an infrastructure so that we can apply for grants. Now we have technical capabilities. We have incredible researchers. Because we're at the University of Connecticut, graduate students are incredible researchers that are, I hate to say, low paid because we're limited by what we can pay them. And we have a data infrastructure that is unique in the United States. So we've been developing the infrastructure that will allow us to provide this kind of technical support in the future and possibly start looking for grants.
I see. So you're one of a kind, you said?
So there are 3 institutes, but we're the only one focusing on public policy. There's another major institute in the City University of New York that is now focusing on arts and culture. And then University of Central Florida has the Puerto Rico Research Hub, which is a small undergraduate research hub. There is no other research institute that focuses on Puerto Ricans anywhere else.
And previous to this, you were a professor at the university?
So I'm still a professor. I've been teaching there for 18 years.
And you were a professor of?
Political science and law. I specialize in U.S. territorial law and policy.
Yeah. Well, this is very interesting. So then, Charles, were you the author or the head investigator on a white paper that was just issued on electric rates in the state of Connecticut?
I'm sorry.
On electric rates in the state of Connecticut?
We are in the process of releasing a report on electric. I supervise all the work. So yes, my name is in everything.
When's that report going to be published?
So I just spoke to the main researcher working at it. He's going to send me a copy on Friday. So our hope or goal is to get it out by Sunday, Monday.
And would you share that with the Commerce Committee?
Absolutely.
Okay, we will be anticipating that. Yeah.
Let me just say, I'm sorry. We'll have a draft. I have to send it to the graphic designer to
get
make
it.
them up, but I'm happy to send you a draft. If
A
that's
draft
helpful.
is, a draft is good. Yeah.
And we're making about 50 recommendations across the board.
Interested in those. Yes, Representative. Right.
That's fine. I guess he's better looking. I don't know what it is. He must be better looking. So public policy, or you're the only institute focused on public policy,
Right now.
right? And you understand much better than I guarantee you, the difference in the territorial legislation or in Congress, Puerto Rico as quasi-state, quasi-foreign. I'd like you and your group to put some thoughts as well on the composition of a trade commission. And to be blunt or explicit, not related to the politics of who should be sitting on it, but in relation to public policy, if the goal is to foster the economic relationships and development, like what should we be doing on a private policy statute basis looking at that would facilitate? And maybe if there's any economic understanding, what the scope of the Puerto Rican economy, the opportunities, as you mentioned, with Mexico. I want to make sure that, the commission, we'll figure out the appointments for functionality of people, but the issues on either statutes or policy will be important. So if I think it would be very helpful to Commerce as we try to move forward, thoughts on the inclusiveness or the areas of focus that the committee should think about in relation to fostering economic growth and development in Connecticut and those cross state or Connecticut Commonwealth lines. So anything good?
So let me just say 3 points from we've already started doing that. My mentor.
I thought I was unique, but I guess not. Go ahead.
No, these are really important questions. My mentor is a top economist who's been working with me, and I have a Inter-American Development Bank economist working in my project who's a graduate student who's trying to finish his PhD here. So we have a really nice team, and we're working with the U.S. Census and a number of Puerto Rican economies to open these possibilities, because we're talking about developing a economic sovereignty model that could help Puerto Rico achieve any status, whether it's statehood, independence, and so on and so forth. So this is a crucial question. I will say from the beginning that 2 challenges are really important to take into consideration. The Puerto Rican government is not necessarily sharing data, except economic data. So there is an opportunity there to do some work. And we need to have access to data here on trade and commerce, because some of that data is not necessarily as accessible. So that's going to be the first step. The second step is really understanding how corporations can take advantage of foreign status and domestic status for tax purposes. And that may present a challenge for this kind of work. But I was just talking to an economist yesterday who provided me with interesting information. Because the economy in Puerto Rico is so weak, they're looking for more trade relationships with states in particular. So there are opportunities, but it's a little bit of a minefield working with the status of Puerto Rico.
And not to sound too provincial, but I am. So when you drill down, I'm interested in specifically Connecticut and Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
So you as an academic will be looking around the 50 states and that relationship, but drilling into the commercial jurisprudence of Connecticut and opportunities that I might be able to structure that give us an edge in that relationship with Puerto Rico would be very interesting to me.
We are limited to Puerto Rico and Connecticut right now. I just spoke to the former director of economic development in Iowa, and they were a little bit jealous. But
where's Iowa? I'm not even. Well, it's not even on the shopping block. But
and let me also just add, there are 2 trade commissions that have been established for a long time in New Jersey and New York, and we're trying to create a forum where we can bring them to share information. So one of our goals in line is to create 2 or 3 conversations. And I'd love for all of you to participate, where we have the Secretary of Economic Development and Commerce in Puerto Rico participating, and we have these other examples of commissions in New York and New Jersey.
With a small legislature, all I would suggest, even though they're partners, we might be nimble. So if there's opportunities that Connecticut could achieve, could benefit of in that tripartite or 4-part arrangement, I'm interested. Just so you hear me clearly. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Meskers. And just lastly, so are you also part author in the House resolution that also came before this committee a little bit earlier to the feds regarding the Jones Act?
I'm not part author, but I'm happy to, we're working on figuring out ways around that to support that initiative.
Oh, okay, so any additional information from your perspective on that would be helpful.
It's a complicated situation.
No kidding.
We found some ways around it for energy, but they're a little bit science fiction. Texas has a barge system where you can bring things to a barge 50 miles outside of the borders and then bring the barge into Connecticut or to the state, and you can sort of work with the Jones Act. So there are alternatives, and we're happy to put those in paper.
We'd be very interested if you could share that. Okay, further questions from members? Seeing none, thank you so much for dropping by, and it's nice to meet you. I did hear about you, so now we've got you on the contact list.
In closing, let me just say, we started to provide support for Puerto Rican and Latino legislators in the state, but we want to provide support for all legislators in the state. We're funded by the General Assembly, so we are here to help.
You'll be sorry you said that.
That's right.
Okay, thank you much. It's so appreciated. Comments from committee members, if not, thank you. And seeing no other members, Madam Clerk, is there anyone else? We will hereby close this public hearing. Thank you. And committee members.